So the purpose of today's session is to hear from the DREAMWEAVING architects, hearing them presenting their emerging designs, and tomorrow will be the time for the participants to give feedback on these. And before we go into detail on how we're going to do this and what today looks like, I invite David and Mona just to give a short contextual background. Just to note that all of us, the timings are very tight today, as you can see from the schedule. So Nikki is going to be keeping time, ringing the bell on me and on all speakers as we go through the day if we run over. Okay, so to Mona first. Okay, Mona.
Can I just stand here? Okay. Morning, everybody. So welcome to this second session, which is our big dream weaving session with the community at large. So David and I have put up a small presentation to just give you an overview of the evolution of this process and how we have got where we are and what is in store today in a very short introduction. So this is, so dream weaving is an open source planning approach. Next, please. And this is going to be about, this presentation is about the evolution of this idea. Where did this come from and how we, as a community, how we have evolved this in-house. Next. So dream catching is different from dream weaving. Dream catching started in 2005, and it is about 100 people who were part of the email list, and we were trying to create a place, an open forum, where we could just come and dream. There was no fixed agenda, and it was a collective space where anybody could come. It was just not for architects. It was for every newcomer, guest, Aurovilian. Everybody was involved. And we explored many ways. So there is dream catching, dream weaving, dream spaces, dream boxes, design cafe, and many more perhaps to evolve. So it is a forum for openness, spontaneity, vision, and joy with no time limit. This is very important because we're always working within time limits and we put ourselves under pressure. And then we have to find the lowest common denominator, then the highest common factor. So we were saying, let's work differently. Next. You can just go next. So these are just some images of how we started. The best part was that we would be doing it on different rooftops. And we were also, exploring different spaces in Auroville at the same time, involving a lot of people. Just wait there. Go back one, please. Yeah. So this was at 6 to 8 in the mornings, and this happened because there wasn't a time we could agree upon. And actually, that was one of the best things that happened, because in this early morning space, where everybody was coming, and there was no distraction, and it was not a discussion. It was a very silent space, where we were just putting forward our thoughts, whatever was inspiring us. And eventually we realized that there is a magic in this, because we are opening it up to something that we all didn't know. And we were creating something collective, which was far valuable than what each one of us could bring to the circle. And like this, we started exploring all the different parts of Auroville, like the zones, the green belts, the entrance to Auroville, etc. And then while doing this, after a year or so, we felt we had collected enough material, enough interesting ideas to share next with the community, and we came up with dream spaces. So this was like a land art installation where we presented all the ideas that we had, collated, and we wanted community to give us feedback and to participate. And it was a very interesting process, because we could get children, we could get people from the villages, and we had these kind of notes where people could read what were, very concise and very out of the box, because we tried to not keep names also which trigger things in people. So we tried to find inspiring ways to trigger different experiences and different ideas from people. Next. And then came the design cafe. So then we realized, okay, but how do we use this to do a design process with a design, with an architectural problem, for example. So we evolved. This was part of a academic design studio that we did, You can see Helmut there. We were about 5 architects, David, me, and Ganesh, and Helmut, and Tony was there at that time. And this was the design cafe, which is what we're going to experience tomorrow. So this is taken over from what is called World Cafe by David Bohm. He was a physicist, and he developed this way of participating on any issue. It doesn't have to be just architecture. It doesn't have to be just planning. It can be about anything in Auroville. And we did try it several times. So this one was that every 20 minutes, you shift to a different table, whereas one person stays constant on the table, the one who is presenting or who has an idea or who's anchoring an idea. And the other 3 people on this table would go to another table. And then they mix around. They don't go in the same group. So at the end of 1 hour, you have a mix of all ideas. Next. And then came dream weaving. So this is a more structured process to weave together inputs. So architects will present designs, which is what is going to happen today. And we have encouraged them already in another session, which happened 2 weeks before, to weave their ideas together. They are allowed to copy, they are allowed to steal, they are allowed to borrow ideas, and this is the best, because then they start weaving their ideas together. Next. So these are also some ideas that we have, with some of where dream weaving actually took literal form, and we could actually work on design. So Crownways was one which happened in 2008. Next. Then Sustainable Livelihood Institute, which happened in 2014. And this is the Garden of the Unexpected, which was also, when the final design came about, it was with dream weaving with the other 2 people who had actually also been selected. So we were the leading architects, but they had also the community participation for the Garden of the Unexpected. Next. And now, this is what we are doing today, Dream Weaving 2022, and I'll invite David to come and take over.
Okay, morning everybody. So here we are today. It's kind of dream weaving's been brought back onto the table with the matter at hand. Next slide. So why are we reinvigorating the dream weaving now? Well, with the events of the last few months, it's pretty clear that we're moving towards creating a new DDP for the whole of the township area. And Vastu Shilpa Foundation, which is B.V. Doshi's office, they've been asked by ATDC and the foundation to develop a detailed development plan over the course of this coming year. They're still in negotiation as far as the contract goes, but that's the idea. And so the dream weaving process was actually instigated, I'll come to that in the next slide, but the secretary actually approached us if we would be willing to do that to help the Vastu Shilpa Foundation and to actually create this sort of community environment now. And the idea is that we've got the existing galaxy concept and the master plan. So you've got the galaxy concept, that Mother and Roger evolved. Then over the years now we've had these evolving master plans. And so to get down to that DDP level where we can really start to concentrate on what needs to happen on the ground, we're sort of providing the poetry or the masala, if you like, that through the collecting the different ideas from around the community. And when we were meeting with the Vastu Shilpa Foundation, we were going to originally look at a small area similar to Crownways from 2008, but then actually Vastu Shilpa suggested, why don't we look at the whole crown? So it's a heck of a challenge in these 7-8 weeks to do the whole crown, to sort of try and conceptualize that. But we took this task on, or I should say more specifically, the architects took this task on. Next. So this is the first day, actually, where we see the overall structure of the dream weaving with all of you present in the room. We have the dream weavers themselves. There are actually 11 teams. And an analytical group which came together with 20 different experts or areas of Auroville. So we've got the different planning inputs, regional planning, urban planning. Of course, we've got water, infrastructure, things like this. But we've also got people coming and giving input from the line of goodwill, because it's basically anything that's going to impact the crown. So Glenn was also there from the forests for where it goes through the parks. Focus group, again, around 30 individuals, hopefully most of you here today. And that's basically representing different perspectives that didn't necessarily come and give us a particular input in the 3-day workshop. So that can be from the educational side, from the youth side, from the bioregional side, etc. And finally, we have the randomly selected group. And the idea of this is coming from the Citizens' Assembly, which we did this time last year, to try and capture the voice of the silent majority in Oroville. And we found actually through this Citizens' Assembly on water, it was very well received. And this kind of random selection idea we felt works really well, and we got very positive feedback on that. Next. So far, as I already mentioned, it started in September, December with various discussions between ATDC, Oroville Foundation, and Vastu Shilpa Foundation. The main thing at that time was evolving the brief, which all the architects have been working with. And once we reached a point towards the end of December, Omar did a great job of reaching out to some of the architects to start getting their feedback, weaving that into the brief. And at the end of it, we also then reached out more to the community. So that was, we gave presentations to the youth, to the bioregion, things like this. And so finally then we gave the presentation in the Unity Pavilion, where we were looking for a kind of a show of hands to get a sense of, can we move forwards with this? We didn't have time to go through a full community process and get the full ratification of the RA, but we felt we're just going to roll with this one, and we got a good show of hands at that time. So that was kind of like the starting gun. And at that point, roughly 20 architects signed up to participate. Next. So we had a quick walk around the crown as a very first step with the maps to get a sense of the lay of the land. Next. We also had an initial dream catching session, similar to what Mona was just describing, on the solar kitchen roof. Next. And then we started really sort of with the nitty-gritty 3 days technical workshop, where then the analytical people were giving their input. So here, for instance, we've got Suhasini coming more with the planning aspects. And of course, it was in Bhumika Hall. And this was really a great opportunity for Vastu Shilpa to get an overview and get a sense of the wide range of expertise that we have in Oroville and the work that's been done over all these years. Next. So then, from that point on, the architects started sketching, started coming up with ideas. We just had an initial sort of more relaxed sharing session around it in CSR. Next. And then 2 weeks ago, we had the very first dream weaving session here. Originally, that was going to be live streamed, but because many of the architects actually have never worked together before, we were feeling it's actually better to give them a bit of time and space to get used to that. So we didn't live stream it, but you'll be getting more or less a repeat of that process today. And hopefully the architects, you'll see the work that they've done now in the last 2 weeks, but they'll be similarly giving the type of feedback that Mona was referring to, where we give positive feedback, and the idea is you try and borrow more and more ideas from the other schemes, and that the schemes slowly get woven together over a period of time. Next. So today we're calling it the Big Weave, because we've got all of you here as well. So the architects will do their bit today, and then tomorrow we'll be reaching out to the other groups of you that are here that we've defined. So tomorrow it will be more small group discussions. Today, when the architects give their feedback, you can all see that. Whereas tomorrow with this design cafe format, you will all be giving feedback in smaller groups, 4 or 5 people around a table. It will be facilitated so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. But it's also very, very important, the forms that you've been given, as we go through the presentations, it's important you'll have 5 minutes to fill that in. And because it's impossible with this number of people over these 2 days to verbally receive everybody's feedback, the forms are so important, and the verbal part is just part of a more the social aspect, and you can hear from each other what people's ideas are. Next. So going forwards, the first dream weaving was 2 weeks ago. The last presentation will be 2 weeks from now, on the 2 weekends from now. That's where the designs should be finished and will be presented, and we will go through some kind of process to decide which schemes people like the best. And then there will be a final presentation during the birthday week to the wider community. Of course, in that weekend, it will also be live streamed, the first weekend. And then there will be all the work, along with a finished report, will be sent very soon after that to the Town Development Council and Vastu Shilpa. This will include all the designs. All the work that's been done will be forwarded. But what's important is with these different groups, which you all represent, it's also giving a sense of the different parts of Oroville as to which designs they actually think are more relevant. So for instance, the architects might choose a different design as being their favorite than the technical people, than the focus group or than the randomly selected people. So it kind of gives Vastu Shilpa Foundation a kind of a sense if we're all on the same page or if there are different aspects there too. Next. There we go. Yes. Vastu Shilpa right here now, watching on Zoom, by the way.
Thank you, David and Mona. So before we start going into the presentations, I just want to provide a little bit more detail on some of those aspects. As David said, this is the first time we have so many different people in the room. So yes, welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. As he said, we've previously been working with the architects and with the sort of technical group. They were with us from the presentations at the start of January. And we now have the two new groups. So one of them we have called the focus group. Don't get too hung up on the terms. Focus group is just a term that's used outside Oroville to say there's different people with different perspectives coming together so that you can get feedback from many different flavors. These people, many of them are also experts, as well as the expert technical group. So as David said, we have people from all aspects, entrepreneurs, those working in services, in education, in forests, artists, healers, the youth, and many more. And what's really important, just to make sure everyone is aware, that the people in these groups are not meant to represent the views of everybody in that field. It's really just to bring to this process different flavors from different fields, different areas of Oroville. We'd love to have everybody in the community involved in this process, but we really don't want to overwhelm the architects anymore with that amount of feedback. And also we want to make these encounters meaningful. So if we have too many people, it doesn't give much chance for interaction. So we've been really trying to balance those aspects of having different voices in the room, not overwhelming the architects, and making it meaningful. So it's not 100% perfect, but it's sort of where we landed to try and meet all of those needs. Okay, and finally, as David mentioned, the other new group are the randomly selected participants, which we hope will help us go even further into Oroville's diversity, because our community has so many different flavors and aspects. It's important as many of them are here as possible. So that's who's in the room. In terms of what we're doing today, as David said, we're hearing from the architects updating us on their emerging designs today. So we have 11 architects, so time is going to be quite critical as we go through the day, so Nick is helping this morning with that. So we have 6 this morning. The first 3 will be Fabian, then Raj, then Radhika and Shivangi. And then we will have 3 after break and another 5 this afternoon. Each architect will have 25 minutes to present their ideas. We will be ringing bells just to keep time because it might not seem like much if they overrun by 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but if 11 people do that, that's half an hour. If they overrun by 5 minutes, that's an hour. So we're going to be trying to keep everybody on time. As David said, after that, there'll be 5 minutes for silent reflection. It's really important you take notes in that time because you will need these tomorrow because you will have forgotten what the architects said in their detail. So this is your way to capture your thoughts and then bring them with you tomorrow. So if you don't have a form, Kathy and Praveen and Anshul are handing those out. So just let yourself be known to them, put your hand up if you need. And then we'll have hopefully 5 minutes for some of the architects to be sharing their feedback. So feedback today is just for DREAMWEAVING architects to each other. Tomorrow is a chance when everybody else gets to give their feedback. We will hopefully hear from Doshiji and the Vastu Shilpa Foundation team just before lunch and just before we close. And at lunch, the randomly selected group, if they just stay behind for a few minutes, we'll just give a little check-in then for them. It will also help us stagger the lunch queue at Anam Kitchen, which is where lunch will be. And from 1:45, there's also drop-in opportunity for focus group members. If there's anything you don't understand, there'll be people here who can help you answer those questions. So you're welcome to come at that time. And yeah, we will finish by 6 o'clock. So tomorrow is about giving the feedback. we will brief you on that tomorrow. All you need to do today is make sure you take notes as you're going through the process. Okay, so you might be thinking this sounds like quite a long day and wondering how you're going to be paying attention to it. So we've just got a very short video, which Sophie will play, just to give you some tips on that. So it's just a minute or so.
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half miss the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion. Learn more about this illusion and the original gorilla.
So did anyone not see the gorilla? Okay. So it's just a fun, small reminder that when we're paying so much attention to specific detail, we can miss some really interesting things that are happening around that. We also sent a little video on bias. You may have seen this. If not, we encourage you to watch it before tomorrow's session. But it's just a reminder, really, that our brains are naturally wired to pay attention or more attention to things we already believe, to people we like, to people like us, and also to the negative. And it was really useful when we were cavemen to focus on the negative, but not so much for a process like this. So we're just encouraging you and reminding you to try and keep as open a mind as possible and try and see as much as you can. It's also an opportunity today to really retrain your mind to look beyond the negative. So considering what inspires you about each design, what you would like to see more of on the crown. So yeah, we encourage you to keep this attitude of listening to everyone with an open heart and mind. And we also, as we say, the timing will be fairly tight, so we encourage everybody, presenters, participants, to be on time. We're really grateful for the energy and the time that so many people are putting in to make this process happen. So we just need to be, yes, respectful of each other's time. And on that note, I will hand over for our first presenter, who is Fabienne.
Where do I stand if I can stand here on the stage?
You stand on the stage preferably, actually.
Okay, good.
Much better if you move this side. Yeah, then you don't have to have this.
Okay.
I'm clipping this, Fabien, I'm clipping this on your front pocket.
Yeah. Those things. Okay. I can. Okay, okay, good morning. This sounds a bit, there's a lot of echo. Okay. Good morning, so forgive me for being a bit nervous. Being the first to present it, a lot of the architects have seen what I'm going to show already, so forgive for that also. Initially we had, I think the understanding was that the sequence of the presenters will be random, and then because my part of the work, and I haven't been working in a team really, I think most of us haven't been really working in teams because it was a lot of time pressure, it is a lot of time pressure, forming teams takes time. So this is mostly a very personal interpretation of the task that we have signed up for. And because I was making an effort of zooming out and looking from the outer perspective and then coming towards the crown, somehow it was felt that it's better if I start with that. As I said, it's all about anchoring the galaxy, not only the crown being a very important part of the galaxy, anchoring the galaxy, the crown, all the elements, Auroville, into the context in a design exercise, which is very important to me, to merge vision and reality and then move progressively forward. For me, since I'm here, I'm trying to find ways of how can we take that image, how can we take Mother's vision, which brought all of us here, how can we take that and land it onto this plateau, into this cultural, social, political, topographical context, finally, without animosity and all. And just, Omar said it at one point really nice, no, take it as a joyful exercise to work together. Next, please. So for me, I had to do some basic framework. As I said, it's very assumed, it's very personal. It's not supposed to offend anybody when I say Auroville is not to be built on a flat and empty plateau. It's just for me my experience of living in Auroville for quite a long time. For me, it's clear that the ground conditions don't support a 1:1 implementation onto the ground. And even if it would have been, we should have done that 50 years ago, buying all the land, the villages wouldn't have had that extent what they're having today. For me, it's also clear Auroville is not a finished product, and it's a process which takes its time, like dreamweaving. The galaxy, as beautiful as it is, it serves as a possible blueprint, as an ideation, as a concept that waits for us to take up that challenge and find appropriate manifestations. The master plan, and I'm not arguing which one, is one step towards that manifestation. It's not rigid. It was never intended to be. I don't go into that master plans are part of a larger framework. They need development plans. They need annual plans and so on. So again, the master plan needs to connect to the larger frame and the context. Similar, all of the Aurovillians, or most, I speak from my perspective, I'm a transitional being. I'm far away from being the true Aurovillian. I drive a motorbike, as many of us do. I'm sometimes non-vegetarian and all. I swear, I have my anger issues. So far from perfect. So with that, and I think many people feel the same, with that we have to do what we are in the present moment, aspire and move towards. So with that also motorized traffic as we have it, it's part of our world. So we have to gradually shift away from motorized traffic. And so Auroville, being then an urban exploration, will by default, has always had an experimental character, and the parameters beyond, of course the dream and the charter are there, but our day-to-day life experiences, our growth, our failings, that's all changing. So, and for me then the work on the crown needs to be seen in the above context and cannot be addressed in isolation. So this presentation, so there are a lot of caveats in the whole thing. So this presentation is really a personal attempt of bringing mobility as one important part of urban life, of Auroville, to bring that into the context. It calls for an approach that does not blind out the life which we have all around us, which we hear, which I see when I drive out of Pichaniculam every day. And it's also not about demonizing or finding the need to protect Auroville from it, but it's rather an approach which looks towards a mutually beneficial coexistence between us who have consciously chosen to live here and the people who live around. It's a rough suggestion. I'm not a town planner, I'm an architect, I know the area fairly well, but it's just a rough suggestion, a starting point, and it needs a lot of professional collaborative work between planners, Aurovillians, panchayats, local population, state and central government. Thanks. Next. So what I did is I zoomed out. When I looked at for me it was always kind of sad in a way to see the galaxy being so isolated and not linked with the context. Even in early drawings, you could see there was one northern bypass, there was a southern bypass, and then there were some kind of connects from the outer ring. And that was it. Even in the mobility study of Billinger and all, it was not much more. No, it was marked, okay, northeast kind of node, northwest node. So then I zoom out a little bit. Thanks, David. It's really helpful. So what we have is we have the highway going to Tindivanam. I think a largely underutilized main road. We have the East Coast Road. We have from Pudupet up here all the way to Olundayapet, we have one road, which we call the Nessel Road, which is by now really developed, not so much traffic, and we have, which could serve as the northern bypass. We don't have a southern bypass outside of our master plan area. So the only thing what we have is the road from Bomayapalayam or Mudalia Chavadi going through Kulapalayam, through the Greenbelt, touching the city area, then going through Edayan Chavadi here to Kut Road or here to the toll gate in Moratandi. We have umpteen of roads which are, and all of these yellow roads are already paved. They go through heavily densely populated areas. And then we have roads which soon will come, which are partially here at Udumbu already paved, and there is a large push to develop this. There's one here which goes from Pete to Aragabumi, the road down here to Pondi. So just... Yeah, so just to see the wider context, zooming in, you see... That was one too many. No problem. No, that's back. Yes, so this is zooming in into our master plan area with a kind of imprint of the master plan proposed roads. And I hope it's not provocative if I say that they are proposed, but that's what's written in the master plan document. You see we have large patches of temple land. Orange is a little bit of Perambuk, which is very important to consider because a lot of these roads, for example, from here up the Samriddhi Canyon, here up next to Arya and all, the road which goes from Certitude all the way to the Matrimandir, these are all roads which are on Perambuk. So it's not so easy to just wish them away. And for me, the next step in this work was really to look, how can I take this idealized road imprint with the galaxies, with the line of forces, how can I take that and connect it with the traffic systems, with the growth areas, with the water bodies, with the forest areas, with the land holdings? How can I bring that together and see how much comes out of it? For me, it was always when I looked at the galaxy, I always wanted to work on almost like a Swiss cheese, where you have that perfect round cheese, and then you puncture holes, no? Where there's a village, there's a lake, whatever, and then you see what comes out. And for me, being a planner, that's what really is fun, to somehow see how, I don't want to say mental systems, but how conceived systems react with the many aspects of life and how they become alive and such. Next, please. So this is purely the master plan roads and the line of forces. Next. So, and then this is something which, and I will explain it next. First, which I explain next. If I really look at areas, I see the villages over here, I see the water bodies over here, I see the highway, I see a large part of our green belt, the regenerative forest work which has happened over here also. So a lot of development happening over here. So then this is something which, and again, it's a very personal, it's a very unprofessional approach. But for me, it's kind of, okay, how can I fuse them? How can I also, for me, it's always difficult to understand how we have no problems of offloading all the traffic which goes to the Matri Mandir or to the visitor center to guide that directly through the 2.5 meter wide road in Edayan Chavadi. This here, it has charm, but it's a complete mess. So what can I do to bypass certain areas? So I could imagine that some of the traffic which goes in, and we have to think of all the different categories of traffic which are there. So I can go, maybe you do the next one. So I could imagine that parts of the traffic which come from over here goes, and here we have the outside of the master plan area. It's mostly not developed land yet, highly sought after with increasing rates. I could imagine some bypass coming over here. I need to take this road as a given. And however sad it will be, it is one of the most beautiful avenues in our region. I don't see that the trees will survive the next 10, 20 years. It's just so much pressure on that road already. Here they started widening it. So this road is a given. So I could unload some of the traffic going through Kuilapalayam. I could do that with a bypass road over here. Similar I could do here, and this is the one road in the master plan layout which is actually there. So I could have here from that place, the back road, Red Earth Riding, or Brihaspati, and end from here, from Moratandi, I could bypass some of the traffic here. The first step also would be to install more toll gates over here, so that all the trucks which carry chemicals and all, they are not necessarily bypassing the toll gate over here, but they would have to go here. So we would already save quite a lot of traffic. I can do the same over here. There is already one node over here which goes to Sanjeevinagar, Alankupam. I could make a small bypassing Irumba. It could be a very beautiful, very sacred entrance with the temple over here. So then I come over here, the traffic could move. I have a reception center over here. Yeah, so this is for me, maybe I go into detail later. I marked it a little bit in colors, the areas where you see a lot of development happening in the future. And as it is, right now it falls a little bit into place that where we have the chance to increase our forest area or green belt, we don't have much traffic as yet. We have a lot of traffic coming in here with the villages connecting. So here I would just see that I have a very careful filtered traffic coming in. I also see that the outer ring is an important part of the whole road concept. So why not try to have it as an imprint on the ground, using it as a cycle path, using it as a tree walk, using it marked symbolically, not necessarily as your 30-meter wide road. For me personally, this was one of the key drivers behind doing all of that work, because if I would imagine I have a 30-meter wide road cutting through Revelation, cutting through Samriddhi forest, a large part of what that part of Auroville has done in the last 53 years is gone. And it's not only about the numbers of trees, but it's the destruction of a working singular biotope. So that for me was, but again, where can I work with the outer ring, for example, to make it meaningful? So we have the chance to bring it over here. We have the chance, and the TDC is working on it. We can do the outer ring here. Maybe we push it a little bit inside so that on both sides of the road we have Auroville land. Here again, I don't know, is it required to have the outer ring because I have a large traffic over here? Maybe again, it's just symbolically marked, or it becomes, I don't know. I have the chance to really connect the industrial zone from Kotakarai, from Alankupam entrance over here, can create a loop road. So with that system, for me, I thought there is a chance of working sensibly, bringing in the required infrastructure mobility-wise right now, so that the city can grow for the next 10, 20, 25 years. Next, I'm sorry, this is really, next, please. So I rushed through it. So here, these presentations will also be available, I think, on the internet if people want to refer more to it. So here are some of the key elements of this mobility proposal. Next. And for me, is it still possible to see the galaxy? I can, and I think a lot of the people who have seen it said similar, yes. Next. So here it's a little bit more, you overlay it and you see that we have to then, and this is a lot of work and it's not possible to do that in 6 weeks, 8 weeks. We have to see what the Southern Service node becomes. It will become a transport switch. You have parking, you have facilities, you have services, petrol bunks, I don't know. You have an access control here at Sukhavati. You have an access control here at Dana. You have an access control here and here. You create that loop. So it's pretty much the same map, but zoomed in a little bit. This is a key part which will host all the facilities we have to welcome visitors. I think we can't say it. We have, what was it? I think 1 million visitors every year. So we somehow have to accommodate, facilitate them. I'm not right now debating the line of goodwill. It can play a very good role, and I actually like the imprint on it. It's large. We have to see how it's possible, but I think it's a daring gesture. So yeah. What I do also here is because, and this maybe people find provocative, but for me, I would keep the existing road that we have over here, the road from Certitude to Solar Kitchen. I would finally acknowledge that this road exists. It's there. I would pave it. I would also give people who have, hi Julio, who have their private interests next to that road, like Muddy and his sons, or whatever is over here, I don't know the name. I would give them the chance to be integrated into Oroville. Why not? So, and then from here, anyway, the road is paved. I can use it very well. And with that, I can connect here around the lake, which comes whatever shape it will take. I have my traffic much controlled, much less Oroville internal. I have here the traffic going on the crown. The cultural zone, in my imagination, being much more inward looking, much more focused on e-mobility, slow traffic, pedestrian. So I would see a gradual decrease of traffic over here. Again, the main traffic is here, and it takes into perspective that ideally within the next 10 years, we all switch to community transport, e-mobility, away from fossil fuel motorized vehicles. Next. Yeah, and then it really focuses in on the crown. So you have wherever, I have like the Solar Kitchen roundabout here, I have the Vikas radial. Here I have the end of the residential zone, sector 1, I have Kalabumi. So I could create on the crown, with its changing character, I could create, so again, changing character of the crown. For me, the crown is not a 16.7 meter wide road necessarily, which is uniform, cutting all around through that center. It will change depending on what zone it goes through, if it crosses a green corridor, if it's largely for internal traffic, if it's industrial traffic, for example, here where I have the land owned by Michael Bonke, where it's sometimes, for example, when it crosses Darkhalli, ideally I would see it just, and I come to that later if the time allows, I would just see it as the infrastructure going through a service road, either on the ground or floating above the canopy. The same here in Bliss. Now we've created conditions so the high tension line goes in, but still the main traffic which wants to find its way can go on the existing road, which then anyway goes further to the Dana road and connects to the Greenbelt. So, and on all these areas, I could have kind of different plazas. Next. Yeah, so these plazas, I could have a cultural zone plaza here where people meet, play, performances. I have a further access to the sports areas. I have an Oroville Youth Plaza with cultural facilities, info on youth activities, green work, expo, a transportation switch. I have the residential zone plaza, and I think other presentations will focus on that area where I have a large change from individual traffic if I don't do it already here at the Southern Service Node. How much time do I still have? Oh God. Okay. So I have all these different plazas, which, to borrow one term, could really become the jewels on the crown. Jewels off the crown. So yes, next. So what I then did in the next section, so it's all just a focus in, and that's still a lot of work to be done. And I don't know how many of you looked at the presentation of Lata and Prashant, which they divided the crown into 8 segments, and they analyzed the topographical part, they analyzed what are the boundaries, they analyzed the hydrological state, and then they gave recommendations of the existing use and proposed use. So I just copied it because I don't know how much it has been shared so far. Next. So I just wrote down what they did because I think it's already a really good, and both of them are town planners. So it's already a really good kind of guideline catalog of what is and what can happen in the next few years. Next, please. So the same here, we have the residential zone. As I said, 3, 4, and 5, sector 3, 4, and 5. The large part of the traffic could go around here, which then makes this part of the crown similar like the Crownway study. It makes it really a very Oroville internal, slow traffic community space. Pedestrian, cyclists, e-mobility. Of course, you have your delivery for PTDC and what other facilities come up here. And I could have a really beautiful chain of small plazas wherever they overlap or where I have a point of interest. And I can have neighborhood activity points, community facilities, tea shops, what all, hospitality, health facilities. Next. So again, next. Then I come to the international zone segment. It was a long debate why I have here this loop road. Is it a master plan road or not? I think why not? It's a good road. People have been working on it. It seems a kind of logical access part of the international zone. It could extend here towards that road which goes around the lake. Here I have a very interesting plaza where a lot of people come in from Kotakarai, Bharatinagar. I have archaeological findings over there which could really be nicely exhibited. Next. Next. Then I come to the Darkali Park segment. For me, it's really unthinkable to bring in the traffic. And I've shown in the next slide, just keep it there right now, how Darkali stewards have thought about how it can be done. So for me, what I thought is the traffic. We have the existing road over here. I have the Kali temple. I could use part of that already paved, quite beautiful road over here. And then instead of going into Kotakarai, I could develop a road along the fence of Darkali and then come back and join the crowd at the crown at the language lab. And then only I have the infrastructure going through this line of force. One has to see how it develops, and I think other people in our group looked at it. Is it a full building? Is it something else? Next, please. Next. So this was one of the proposals of Darkali, who have been really, so again, to highlight that people have individually also been working on looking at their areas of interest. So they have been working here, trying to find a way of how the cable and a kind of access road could go through Darkali. The parameters of TDC have also been changed over the years. Next, please. Bypassing the water bodies which you have over here. Next. These were different options which they did under pressure. One is just to find a way and just to collaborate and see like, hey, how can we protect what we have created here? What it has a benefit which is really unique. So you could have an idea, you have a working thing you have an access path on the ground, ideally following that prepared road already. You could have a motorable way on top with some loop public e-pods. You could have a skywalk above the canopy. Next. Then downgrade it a little bit. You have just your common flyover. Again, you would have to define what comes, but it still allows the wildlife to continue. Next. Or you go into the most I don't know, grounded version, but then you need to see how do you protect it. They had done already, they opened parts of it and then, sorry, give me 2 more minutes. Next. So then we come, this is the industrial zone, next. Then we have the YC, next. There were a lot of, yeah, this is fine. It's fine, just next. So there were already a lot of proposals done by the YC and the people from Bliss. And I think even though it has been cleared and the infrastructure has been laid in a circular pattern, you still can do a lot around it. We still have Bliss Forest, which is not just a thorny woodland, but you have really beautiful species of trees. We could open up the forest, create arboretums, forest walks. You still have the stage area, the youth. Yeah, what do I say? I think we really have the responsibility of helping and supporting the youth to recreate these safe and joyful spaces that they deserve, protected by the forest in the middle of the city, and the crown will find its way. So again, it's all about the need to have these DDPs. Next. This is then the cultural zone segment where I think we have this beautiful space, Kalabumi. It could extend, it could connect to the sports facilities over here. Next. So what next for me is to collect the feedback, not only the positive, which I think is the point of the Dreamweavers to only give positive feedback, but I'm happy to hear critical feedback. For me, very interesting would be to look at the aspect of infrastructure beyond mobility. Is it really required everywhere to have so many lines? Is a centralized system stronger than a combination of centralized and local systems? What is more resilient? I think resilience is for me one of the key words any city has to deal with. To see how, so I would be happy to hear tomorrow what really is required in what given space. See how other Dreamweavers can work or are working on the ground. See what can be the next steps, and then work with interested stakeholders in some of the more sensitive areas. That's it. Okay. Yes. That was super fast.
Thank you. So we just have about 4 minutes of silent reflection for people to take notes. If anyone doesn't have a feedback form to take notes on, please put your hand up. And Kathy or Praveen will come round.
Your mic's off.
I know it won't. Okay, so this is your time, just feedback, writing down the feedback that you have heard as your notes for tomorrow. So just finishing up making notes, we just have a couple of minutes if there's any of the other dream-weaving architects who want to offer feedback now. Just put your hand up if any of the other dream-weaving architects want to do that. Otherwise it's fine.
Thank you, Fabian. Your study has helped us since the beginning to look at the mobility at really at a grounded level with the layer of galaxy coming in and actually seeing how the galaxy is emerging, even looking at the current context. For me, really the steels would be the industrial zone arrival points that you are talking about, which is a little bit still in the village, but still to figure out how we can make it feasible. And also what I found interesting was the traffic which you looped around the Kali, passing through that Kali temple, and I think that could also create a very interesting space as a connection to the bioregion as well, because there is a presence of Kali temple. And thank you.
We have time if one more of the dream-weaving architects wants to give any feedback. Okay, in that case we can move on to Raj.
Morning, everyone. My name is Raj. I'm here to give some real facts and get ready and hard to swallow words and facts. So sit tight. So looking at Crown, it's more than a road, more than a street. It's a Trojan horse. It could be an opportunity for us to re-engage and build up a relationship with our surrounding. So it's more than what it is. I'm going to come back to this. This could be a reality, the future. The residents in our bioregion receiving a credit or a crypto or a currency you could call, but it's one it's Oroville. So I'm going to come back to this one. So it's been 54 years. Oroville has established itself. So it's coming to a most conservative state in India, Tamil Nadu, and to establish itself. So it's looked at more of inwards and to inner development. So now it's an opportunity to look beyond, build more bridges, so restructure some of the relationship. So I would like to quote this. This is a beautiful words from the mother. Sorry.
You still didn't correct this typo.
Yeah, apologies, there's a typo. But the world remains the same, hasn't changed. India has become the symbol of all difficulties of modern humanity. It is the representation of all human difficulties on earth. And it is in India that there will be the cure. And it is for that I was made to create Oroville. It's beautifully said. I think we need to take this opportunity. Oroville is experimental. We want to push that. We want to look at it like how it can leave a footprint to beyond Oroville, beyond our bioregion, to the India, maybe to the rest of the world. I think there's a real opportunity here for us to look at it. So, some of the key elements for us, like water, food, and community. Today I am asking, can these elements could be the core of city planning? Normally we don't. As planners, as architects, we put other priorities into it. But I want to see whether we can put this as in the core. Crown, I look at it as a system point of view. So it's a service corridor, like the brief says. It's the infrastructure. So what I'm looking at it is, can infrastructure and architecture can have a symbiotic relationship, can blur the boundaries between infrastructure and architecture. So this is my, and I've done looked at a few case studies, and I would like to share with you guys. So this is a picture from Mumbai. It's a photo of infrastructure. If you look at it, you can pick 5 infrastructures here. They are designed by engineers, single use. So we don't want to do it here. We want to do something where there's more than one usage we could take out of infrastructure. This is another piece of infrastructure. Central Park in New York. It actually brings a huge value to the already built up a city around. It's augment the city, creating an extra value of it. This is one of my favorite. It's also a piece of infrastructure, but it is sitting perfectly with that road. So there's a jumbo jet is crossing, but there's a traffic lights on both sides, so you have to stop for it to pass through. So this infrastructure is being used for more than one. It's in Gibraltar. Oops. This is not a sci-fi movie. This is real. It's in Germany. It's still there today, a cable car. So the beauty about this is it follows the natural course of water. So the infrastructure is followed. So there is that relationship here. It's not on a grid, as we see normally. It's not on a grid. So again, I'm looking at like how it could be in the core of planning, which drives the water and the food community, is a driving force of the planning. So there are three elements. Let me start with the water. So the story begins with the water. So some hard facts. This is a real issue. This is by the United Nations. So on a daily basis, we as a residents of Oroville, we consume between 150 liters to 378 liters of water on a daily basis. This is what we consume. We let it go through the drain, so black and gray water. And if you look at it globally, 70% of that water is used for agriculture purpose. Now, we all know this urbanization is taking at an unprecedented rate. India is at the forefront. By 2050, the majority of the population will be living in the urban context. So that's the hard fact. And some of the urbanization is the key driver for change of today and tomorrow. Just water, by the way. So that water is 378 up to liters of water. It's through the drain. Can we do something about it? We are heavily relying on rainwater. We are heavily relying on excavated water or bored water. But there is a precious water we are just letting it go. So can we make use of this water? So there is a small, this is one of the proposition, a small company in Chennai looking at purifying or reclaiming black water through extracts, through herbal extracts. Yes, it is real. So by using tulsi, neem, kadukai, and moringa leaves extracts, you can actually make it potable water with a few drops of it. They had come to Oroville to demonstrate this one. So I was there, and you see one of our friends, he's actually drank the water which has been purified, and it went around. I wasn't that brave enough, but I did smell it. It smelled of like tirtha, from, if you go to the temple, you get tulsi. So that's what it smelled like. But this is real. So he's actually demonstrating in Chennai on a sewage. He takes that water and it does the small experiment. It's very quick. It doesn't require huge mechanical, as we know today. But it's real. It's real. So this process is actually fairly simple, and it works with an existing already a treatment. If there is an existing treatment, or there is the water comes from the house, the black and gray. When I say black water, it's from the toilet. Gray water is shower and kitchen waste, kitchen water. It comes to a tank, and then the coagulant get mixed into that, the extract, and sediment, which you actually extract. That sediment, which is in a soil form, it's also treated. So it's a good fertilizer for agriculture. It could be used as. Then the fresh water get fed into. So now we're looking at this water going into the crown as a system, as a small ponds or holding water around crown as a system of that. So we're looking at it as a built environment. We have a crown, and it is a circulating, a dynamic water. So the wastewater get treated locally in a small capacity, then fed into the crown, and more from the industries and around crown come into this. Then treated water goes out of the crown. So it's a dynamic, the the beauty about this is like you don't have to start all at one go. It could be at incremental as we proceed, as the city grows. So now, all of a sudden, your bioregion, bit of an eyesore for us, like for many reasons, like whether it's mobility, whether it's traffic, and all of a sudden becomes an asset for this. More people are using this water, then we can actually treat that water, and then we can bot back into it. So now, the bioregion becomes a stakeholder in this, what we do. So they have a say in it. So we have a relationship with it. We have a relationship with the people who are. So they have a say in this. This is the beauty about this one. And using that water, potable drinking water, then we begin to grow food in the areas beyond our bioregion, within Auroville as a city. So now, once you have that sort of a water connecting to bioregion, now that water could be connecting back to the Eries, which is already an established system. It's a very ancient system we have around. If you look at much larger, so they're all somehow connected above ground, below ground. Now that could be the Kalivali Dam could also be fed into, so this water. So if there is a heavy rain, so these loop could take some of the water, then distribute it according to. So this little system of connecting using treated water and that could be spread across other cities also. Could be a small network. So you could already you begin to connect these from cities and some small regions. So there could be a system of network. So this is a little scenario of how built environment, food production, can actually emerge. So there's a loop, water, which is circulating. Then you have built environment, living, also food production in built environment, could be in high rise, and the growing fields in between. A couple of other cross sections. So now, oh no. It's a gibberish language. So taking that elements, the water, so now looking into crown. So this is a natural nature interpretation center. Apologies for about the typo. Again, it's just, it must be the Linux, I guess. So looking at this sensory experience through elements, water and food and so forth. So we're looking at it as one of the place which is near a youth center existing. What is a nature interpretation center? So it's about studying, it's about learning through our surrounding, through senses, sensory experience. Day and night we're going to, it's from all ages. So there's a learning from a different senses. So this is one of the radial. This is the proposed element. So now having that water as part of that infrastructure. This is existing forest, bliss forest. You're walking through and key areas we're observing. And kids would be looking at certain parts of it, whether it's a frog or whether it's a cocoon of a butterfly or a tree root system or young leaves are popping up. And so you're looking in more detail. So this is going below. So you have, is one of the, this is in New Delhi, a step well, similar idea. So you have water on both sides. You're coming down to a space within. So you have water here. You're looking at a installation of root, now how tree root could be cut across. And actually, you get to see, we don't get to see often what's below the ground. So this is a huge installation here. Oops. So you see the water on the side, and you're going down into the subterranean. This is the entry. And this is inside. You're looking at the sky and the water and this beautiful space. This is above the ground you have some music instruments. You're actually collecting water, wind, transforming into a music sensory experience below the ground. So looking at food, this is another case study I did. So this is a Cork in Ireland where a butter factory provided employment for women, and on how that actually changed the demography and the socio background in Cork. So the food left a major impact in this little town. And this in Bangladesh, how it used to be a river, and due to global warming and salinity, how they're restructuring the food production. It's a floating beds, and this is a very century-old tradition, so they are coming back with it. So again, how we are reconfiguring ourselves to the needs. This is a very interesting restaurant. This is in Venice, in Italy. A plateau is a small shack. So what it is, if you go there, there's only 8 people can fit in. You go inside, the net goes down. You actually catch whatever, it could be crab, could be shell, could be fish, it'll be cooked straight away. So this is an experience with the food. So you may not like it, but it's the experience of it. So I really like this quote from Buckminster Fuller: you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So I'm looking at the food. I'm looking at food is how it's connected to mobility. So this is a small glimpse of like what's the trend is like. So if you look at Kuala on the weekends, you will see these number plates, self-driving cars. People are coming from Delhi, sorry, not Delhi, not yet, Bangalore, Chennai, coming here to experience food, purely food. So there are 3-4 listed, they have lists, so they need to have a breakfast, lunch, so it's all set. So they come for the weekend, 5-6 people drive from this, normally young people. So it gives me a little trend what it's like to be, what it's like in the future, what this food can be. Auroville has a multi-cuisine around here. So, and I want to see how this could be taken to a next level. Let's say, because it's directly connected to mobility, let's say these few key restaurants within Auroville Road, we relocate them to a place where it's more easy to approach, a better parking, and a more robust relationship. So what you're looking at is food being consumed, but at the same time you're looking at where it's been grown, how the food actually gets on the table. So a beyond relationship as food as its own. There's few like Sustenance Farm, Mark's Cafe, Tanto. Let's take these and put it to a farmland where there's actually food is growing. So that's actually near Irumbai Tank, close to the Tindivanam bypass. So these new restaurants could be on a small footprint. They're touching the ground lightly, like Glenn Market says. So they could be above the ground and on stilts, on stumps, but they could be in farmland where the bunds are. So these are the new restaurants could be. This is one, how restaurant is actually meandering, where on the existing bund. So you're looking at through the field. So you're not only actually being in the farmland, you're creating an ecosystem for people to grow what you need. So it goes beyond that. So you're creating a demand. So people who haven't been growing, they can actually see what's the trend, what's the demand. They begin to start supporting to your restaurant because you have the demand there, you have the market there itself. This is one of the experience where you're sitting down and you have forest and the open field and water. and it's on stilts, so you're not actually disturbing a lot on the ground. So, a new reality where we are utilizing black water, we are building a relationship with the consumers, all the stakeholders, in this case bioregion, so we have a direct relationship, direct dialogue with them and us, so it's not about that, it's all of us. So Auroville sits in this patch of southern states of India, and it's so rich. It's a tapestry of richness all around us. And it only makes sense to integrate and to build more bridges and to build with that. I think it's really a great opportunity, this crown, for us to rethink about our relationship with the surrounding key elements like food, water, and community. With that, I want to ask, can we put these really, really important issues into the driving force of the planning today? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raj, and thank you for keeping on time as well. It's much appreciated. So everyone has 5 minutes now for some silent reflection. If anybody doesn't have a form or a pen, please put your hand up and someone from the team will come and help. So before Sonali, we just have a few moments. If any of the Dreamweaving architects want to give any feedback on what they heard. Okay, saving the feedback for tomorrow. Okay, in that case, we can move on to Sonali. Welcome to Sonali.
you tell me next.
So how do I do that? I have to tell you every time, next. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity, and I'm actually jumping directly in the week 4. I couldn't present in the week 2, but thanks to the efficient Citizens Assembly team and the facilitators, I could watch all the presentations online, and hopefully I have managed to share these ideas in the presentation which I'm going to do today.
Next one, okay?
It's working?
Down arrow is next one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So press only once, and then it takes like a few seconds, okay? So don't
Fine.
press several times.
Sure. This was my first dream catching experience, and I must say it was quite enlightening. And when we did this dream catching experience, we talked about what is actually crown, what crown means to us. So these are some of the keywords which came to us, and social hub is the most important thing because we have so many people and we actually hardly manage to meet them. So crown is not just a road or street, but it's a social hub, and which connects all of us. So human experience is the key element of crown. We all can relate to these pictures, and the most important of all these pictures is the diversity of these experiences which we are imagining to have on the crown. So I will not go into the details of all of these, but how do we manage to have this diversity on the crown? So how do we envision the life of the crown in the galaxy context? I hope I managed to deliver this right. So the unique thing about the galaxy concept is that the crown kind of sits in a place where it connects. This is the only element of the galaxy which connects all the zones, and it already provides that opportunity to have the varied experiences because it not only passes through the zones, but it also passes through 4 parks. So already galaxy context gives the opportunity to provide for all these varied experiences. And when you see the crown, somehow when we actually kind of try to displace it or shift it, probably there will be no galaxy because it is kind of this is the only unifying element in the entire plan. And when we see Roger Ange's sketches, thanks to all the translations by Marie, that Roger talks about this is not a barrier, but it's actually a transition space from the city to the inner city. And when you see the inner city, it is having like a park-like quality, and the density shifts, and it has all free-form or isolated buildings. So it is the crown is actually providing the passage to the inner city, and that's why compactness, porous, and harmony in building language, which she's talking about, becomes very important. And what we see is crown buildings are all visually connected to the center of this park, which is Matru Mandir. We talked about connection to the center, connections, continuity. So all these aspects are reflected in this sketch. And probably when we walk on the crown buildings, we could see Matru Mandir because there is hardly 300 to 400 meters distance from the lake to the crown buildings. So this is the section which is through the crown buildings, which is given by ATDC. And it has 2 components. One is right of way and one is crown buildings. So what actually the crown corridors is not just the right of way, but it also has buildings which are 20 to 35 meters in deep, and they can actually go deeper in the park if the architect allows for it. So what is right of way? So right of way is not just right of way can be anything. So right of way is not just a street, but it can have these varied experiences. So it can have lanes, it can have different surface textures, it can have shared space. So it becomes like an outdoor room. It's not just a place where people are actually going and commuting. So the uniqueness, again, when you try to observe this section, the buildings are kind of facing their back to the crown, and they are actually looking onto the inner street, on the inner pedestrian path. And you see that there is a lot of life happening inside these crown buildings. And again, in this particular section, the buildings are stilted. So you see the porosity, the green is flowing, people can walk through. So this is the connection between the outer crown street and the inner street. So the porosity is actually quite important, and the buildings are connected. So these are the three different elements which I saw in this section. So how actually this can look like, if we try to visualize that, I mean, this is just an example, it can be anything, but this could be the scale of the crown street and the bicycle lane, and the pedestrian street can look something like that. The scale of the pedestrian street and the crown street is different. So this is another example. So the pedestrian street can have all the life with market spaces, and the crown buildings and the bicycle lane still continues. So the crown street being the scale as this, it can open up or narrow down. So this is actually the sketch of the Ahmedabad poles. And if you walk through old cities in Indian towns, there is very much this kind of character where the lane opens up. And it looks like organic, but that organic is actually, I mean, what we need to do is that plan that organic. So what is happening in this straight is because of the scale, the buildings are already providing the shade, and it is actually making you walk and pass through. And this is the scale of the crown street. So the crown street can also have arcades where people can walk through. So the buildings can provide that facility to walk. And this is the porosity element. So this can be, I mean, this is just an example to show that the connection of the inner street and the outer street can be through these porticos. And also the street is interspersed by parks. So when this is not like a monotonous street, but it has these elements on the way where you suddenly see green, and it can be like New York High Line where the green is flowing up, or actually the crown is passing through the green. So I referred to the city center proposal by Anupama Kundu, which was done in 2007. And here, if we see the road network hierarchy, most of the city center is actually a zone for pedestrian. So that's why the crown actually becomes an important mobility element. It's not working, yeah. Okay, and the important thing is, again, the circulation, which is actually shown in this red thing, which is actually connecting the entire crown. So even if the buildings are not actually connected, the street actually makes you like a unifying pass through all the buildings. So again, for DDP input, so what is DDP? So I did 2 case studies to be able to to understand what actually DDP requires. We have to imagine how these buildings will fit on the crown and what are these buildings doing on the crown. So this is again an example of Ahmedabad pole, and here you see the street actually opens up in squares, neighborhood squares, and narrows down. And this is actually an example from Bologna. If you see, again, this is the main street, and there are inner streets, and the green is passing through, and there are, again, small pockets of green or negative spaces formed inside. So I took this as an example, it's just an example, just to understand to imagine the life on the crown. So this is actually a 200-meter diameter circle on the east-west axis. This is actually a part where I think Gaia radial will be, and there are a lot of Kaya trees there. So if we, let's say, try to imagine this life on the crown, you already see parts of trees and the buildings are set back and the green is forming inside. So just to imagine how these existing patterns, if we are overlaying on the crown, what the life will be. This was just an example to imagine how these buildings are related to the crown. And then we start getting patterns like that, which are with trees, paved areas. And then I try to draw actually some examples myself with these things which are constant. There are trees and the right of way and the building lines which are given. So we can get patterns like that, which Roger was talking about. So this actually has the succession of buildings with transparency and ease, and it can actually accommodate all the watersheds, trees, and everything. And the the uniqueness is, even if the road is circular, you can actually achieve this with orthogonal forms and still have the compactness and porosity with the inner and the outer street. So then you can start following the line of the setbacks, and you can start getting hierarchy of spaces. So some of the buildings can be even stilted, and you can pass under. So you can actually create unifying passing space. And Shailaja talked about positively defined public spaces. So actually buildings form this, and we can get properly shaped negative spaces where actually most of the life is, like meeting and circulation points. And this can accommodate green, urban farming, or watersheds depending upon the particular zone and the particular site. And it can also actually accommodate these shoulders, because the buildings they don't have to actually have a one line sitting on the crown all the time. It can accommodate trees, existing trees, and even create these shoulders, which are important for actually the meeting points of the radials and the parking zones. And actually it doesn't limit us. You can have any form. So the form is not limited. Architects can actually express with liberty and creativity in the same framework. A lot of forms are possible to create this language. So if we start kind of listing the elements of the crown buildings, we can have solar panels, which we talked about, which we learned about in the energy. There will be viewpoints, urban farming, water catchments, the inner street, tree covers and circulation, and the porosity between the inner and the outer street. So this is just an example. I wanted to draw an architectural exercise so that I can imagine how that could be. And these are different elements. So again, you can see that the buildings are connected horizontally and vertically. So you can accommodate in the volumes all these aspects, and it actually creates varied but unified buildings. So again, this is the existing reality. Let's say we have trees. There are canyons, Porambuk lands, watersheds, and everything. So this is, if we start calling it, let's say, plot now, crown plot, it's approximately 5,000 square meters, 35 meters by 150, if you leave the spaces on both sides. What we have actually in different zones have different functions. So this language can be interpreted with the building typologies, because the plots can vary. They can become smaller plots depending upon the usage, or become bigger. And we can define the functions in different zones. And this is just an exercise that if we actually try to interpret that language in the entire crown, it actually gives you that possibility to create many things. And these are some of the Christopher Alexander's pattern language, which Henrik shared. And all of these things which we can actually define in this pattern language. So we actually, to define DDP, which can look like planned organic, we have to create an abstract structure. So this kind of pattern language can actually lead to something like that, which we were talking about earlier, street as a room, or arcade buildings and neighborhood squares. So input for DDP will be, again, clarity in urban design, defining this pattern language. Again, not cold bylaws, but maybe deeper principles allowing liberty. And again, architects are free to express how they interpret that pattern language incorporating ground reality. And when we see historic towns have these architectural features or building palettes which repeat, and that's how it gives them kind of a unified character. So probably we need to define that also, so we actually create that character. And again, we shouldn't forget that this is not just the city of DDPs and urban designs. It's actually a city which is actually already envisioned by the mother, and she calls it the symbol of progressive unity. So I hope that crown becomes a symbol of progressive unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali. So again, we have 5 minutes for people to just individually write down their reflections. Again, if anybody doesn't have a form or a pen, just put your hand up and someone from the team will come and help. Okay, so if any of the Dreamweaving architects have any comments, any feedback they would like to share?
Thank you, Sonali. It was very interesting to see the examples you gave from Ahmedabad, Pole Housing and Bologna, and the way you superimpose them on Crown, and the spaces that thereby flowed through were very beautiful. And I would like to steal your interweaving also from the spaces from Form, Space and Order that you took. I would like to see a change in the feel of the crown as it passes through different zones. If you could, further think about that. As it passes through different zones, how it would change in its feel. And I would be very happy to see how you would think of connecting it across the road space. Along was very beautifully done, and it was very beautifully seen how different possibilities exist despite the road. But it would be nice to see how we can also go across the road.
Any other feedback? Any other architects want to share? Okay, so thank you, Sonali. So we can break for tea soon. The tea is still being set up. It will be in this outside area, unless there's anything David or Mona want to add at the moment. Okay, great. We will call you back in it when we're finished for tea. It will probably be around 10:30, but we'll ring the bell, so just keep your ears peeled for that. And yeah, teas and coffees and snacks should be out there fairly soon. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. And our first presentation after the break is Radhika and Shivangi. So welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Radhika.
Hello, I'm Shivangi.
So when we started this exercise, analyzing, looking into the galaxy and into the master plan, and one thing that both of us strongly felt, and that's how we also came together, working together, is this sense of orienting ourselves to give a directionality. Because if you look at the cover of the master plan, as the plan is dynamic, it's very difficult to figure out where the north is. And actually, if you look at this, the axis, Yeah. So that's the north-south axis of the Matra Mandir. And for the initial few exploration, it was almost like, oh, the north is actually the park and not the industrial zone. But then slowly we got this confirmation that no, the north is actually up here towards the industrial zone. So yeah, so I think that's one of the things that we learn, and we would strongly also put forward that in the future master plans and coming studies, we kind of orient ourselves, not because that's kind of an international practice to have that, and it's easy to ground ourselves as well.
And also, like Radhika mentioned, this also came from the space where we both were working differently and trying to figure out how the space of the form of the galaxy, which is circular, which is dynamic, can still give us some sense of groundedness. So when we worked with this idea of directionality and the grounding, we really felt the orientation being the first being a first inquiry that we want to make, and that is what also led us to the next steps of discovering what different things have been said about the different directions and the model itself.
So we started going back to the base and studying what is the vision from the mother and how Roger took it. So this was the first sketch, and I think the initial idea was to have the industrial zone towards the east, towards the sea, with 4 industrial zones, and yeah, a lot of those ideas. But then when Roger came back in 1965 with his first report after the many studies, he gave some pointers, and one of the first one was to relocate the zones for accessibility and possibilities of extension. So that's how the industrial zone became north, and Mother has given the directional symbolism and also shape symbolism to these zones. So the north, we have a Mahakali industrial zone, which has square, and the color is 7 colors of rainbow, which represents 7 represents realization. Then on the east is the cultural zone. So this got swapped, the international and cultural. So on the east is the cultural zone, and the shape is circle, which means integral power. With the color pale orange. Then on the south residential zone, the shape given was hexagon, which signifies perfect creation. Then on the west is the international zone Mahasaraswati, triangle representing wisdom. So this really kind of gave us an inspiration, you know, because what is the essence of all of these quality, and how do we bring that to our zones? And both of us, we are also Vastu Shastra students, so we also kind of try to draw parallels between them, and then it was a very interesting exercise, and then we saw that if we look at the north, it says it signifies prosperity. When we go northeast, nurturance; east, life energy; southeast, spiritual energies. On the south is more spiritual growth. Southwest signifies wisdom. West is physical growth and expansion, where there is the international zone. Then on the northwest is intellectual growth and creativity. And then also other thing which also came up in one of the expert presentations about these concentric rings in a typical traditional town planning, where the center is kind of a very potent, it holds a very potent energy, and often it is left for sacred prisons or sacred groves. And then as we move along, and as we go towards the outside, there are zones. So after the center, there is the more public services, more administrative services, and then comes the habitation, and then comes the outside relationships.
So yeah, I mean, we tried to see also that when we study the different significance and the representation that was given by the mother and what the cosmology in the Vastu Shastra says, we really felt that there are a lot of parallels to be drawn between the two, and also our understanding, like, like Radhika mentioned, the center being the potent energy and the center being free in some way. We really see that already in Auroville, that the center is not a built mass, the center is the banyan tree, which is the free center, and that gave us another inspiration to really look at the cosmology and then see how the different, what we call here the padas, the different zones are there. And it's interesting to see how the crown that we are now exploring is into the Devika Pada, which, like Radhika mentioned, is about the public services and the administration that's there, after which comes the Manushya Pada, where the residences and where the habitation happens. So it's really that transition between the center, which is dedicated to the divine energy, and then the space which is for the habitation, and the space between the two is really that transition that we are now exploring.
And then when we started looking at the kind of the existing layers, we are thinking of the physical space, and at the same time us occupying our spaces. We as transitional beings, what was kind of there before, where we are at, and what this future aspiring galaxy towards which we are moving. So we are also looking at how to manifest this cosmic city with material awareness of the present context. So there are some layers like the archaeological site, there is the Kali temple, there is also another archaeological findings which were done in this zone, and then there is the timeless banyan, which is giving us a kind of a base, and then we are here with all of our current developments, and then we have our aspirations. So we are also looking at how we transition between these time zones. How do we facilitate this transition between the time zones?
Right, and the ritual, I mean, also that these kind of, like Radhika mentioned, the idea is to look into the physical space, at the same time what we call the Kala Purusha, the space which comes through us through time. So we are exploring into that, and we thought that again another important aspect to look at is the rituals, because the rituals are integral part of the Vastu, and they also create spaces which are adaptive eventually. There are shift in spaces according to the seasons, according to the influence of the planets, and we thought it's an important inquiry to look into how do we transition between what has been there, what is grounding us, what is currently here, and what do we aspire to look at. And here we see some pictures of the Kali temple. So we did that visit, and we really felt it's a very important inspiration we have, very close to the crown, within the 100 meter of the crown. And if you see the image, like the most on the right, that's an image of a little tree in the Kali temple, where the tree has been given some space to really grow even in middle of the built structure. So there is a little cutout that's there for the tree to grow. So, but that's the built space of the temple. Then next picture, which is not so clear, but if you see on the left of the picture, there is a water body that's there. So it's a water catchment which has been not exactly given a clear geometric form, but when we go there, we really see like it's one of those squarish water bodies that could be converted into some kind of a kund eventually. And then the third is what is there on the other side of the temple, where it is surrounded by trees around. So actually, if we see the back side of this image is where the road that we all access right now to Pony Farm is. So the temple is very, very close to that road, but we don't see it also because there is this whole idea of sacred groves around the temple. So what we felt was the temple complex itself, which is nearby the crown there, is already an inspiration with it being a complex where there is a built space, there is also the incorporation of the water body that's there, and the sacred groves, the trees that are around. So we thought that acknowledgement of this is very important here.
Yeah. So when we started looking at all this, and we automatically felt called towards focusing on industrial zone, looking at, especially now that we're looking at development and moving towards a self-supporting community, North also representing prosperity. We thought it's actually, it would be very interesting to strengthen our industrial zone. And this is also a zone mentioned by Nicole. It's an inward-looking zone. When we had the talk from Nicole, it's really the zone where we are looking inward, we are at service. So yeah, and also at a very principal level, this matter, spirit, evolution can start manifesting at this, in this zone.
Yeah. So when we thought about looking in detail at the industrial zone, we also thought that while we look at the zone by itself, it's also important to see how it connects with the zones on the other sides. And it was interesting to see how many other dream weaving architects resonated with it when we presented it last time, of how the zones could actually start merging in some way. So this is a little diagram down there which shows that there are different activities happening in the industrial zone, but there are also some spillover of some activities from the cultural zone and from the international zone that is happening onto the crown. So it really shows the coming together of the crown for the different zones. So for the activities, we thought that as we move from the international zone, it could really have some spaces of the institutional memory. It could have some exhibition spaces which is coming from the exchanges that happens through the international zone, which are reflected onto the industrial zone. Then the spaces where yeah, and then there are spaces like where people working in the industrial zone can come together. They come together to have tea. There are lounge spaces like that. There are co-working spaces. There are some cafes which are maybe not so formal, yet more of the community spaces that are there. Then we just got a picture of something saying community clothing, but the idea is that there is some kind of shopping that happens within the industrial zone that's more for the people who are working there and more for the interaction that could happen within the zone. Then facilities like having laundry during the day there. And then as we move towards the cultural zone, it could be more of the cultural zone spillover that could start happening onto the crown of the industrial zone. So that could mean some kind of market, some kind of exchange through the vocational trainings, exchanging of skills and things like that. And this is the exploration we had. And then we thought that this is all the activities about the day. How about the night? We can have something more at the night where we are kind of integrating further the cultural zone and international zone into the industrial zone, because we do have the infrastructure. And in the night, when a zone which is more about the service and more about work might become suddenly empty, and to add to the security layer of the zone, it would be interesting to add more elements from the cultural zone spill out. So for example, there is a concert in the cultural zone, but the night market and the food stall after, or some kind of gathering after, happens into the industrial zone. So if you see, the little sketch that was there before has now slightly changed with more of the merging of the activities from the cultural zone and also from the international zone. So we thought that there could be a full spectrum of activities like the stargazing sessions, some camping sites, some kind of bonfires, some kind of sacred circles, some kind of working together or sharing together, some kind of night walks or night markets. So we really thought that that kind of presence into the industrial zone in the night and be able to use the infrastructure that we have would be important to see.
Yeah, another thing was also that so it's in a way not just industrial zone. We also felt that this should kind of happen in the other zones as well to make the zone integral in itself, so that all the zones work together as a city. So there are these connections. So some parts of some functions, some activities from other zones also happen in the adjacent zones, so that it's kind of integral in itself, and that's how the whole thing can work well together.
Yeah, and then as we dive deeper into the industrial zone, we thought it's also important to start very broadly classifying what kind of activities in the industrial zone happens towards the center and what happens towards the outside. So as we're leading towards the center, more towards the peace area, more quieter activities like the artist ateliers, co-working spaces, things like that we thought could be more onto the inside of the industrial zone, while on the outside, it could be more of the production units, the manufacturing activities. And it was rightly mentioned, also pointed out by David last time, that it's interesting that because the line of forces are also planned somehow in this way, the higher part of the line of forces are more towards the center, so they could be more for the activities that require less of movement of the trucks or less of movement of the other vehicular movement that is there, and the manufacturing really happens more towards the end of the line of forces, where the heights of the buildings are lower, and that way it's more connected to the ground there. Yeah, and then we talk about the industrial zone. The very important layer to look at would be mobility. So like already Radhika has acknowledged that, thanks to Fabian, that we could really use that as a base to start working on it. This is really a sketch on top of Fabian's diagram, where we try to understand what are the different connections that we have. So you see the orange spaces are the different villages. We have Kulapalam down there, we have Bomarpalam, Kalapet, the three villages on the top, Sanjeevi Nagar, Alankupam, and Kotakarai, and then the Khoot Road. So we, and the Edinchavi, of course. So we see that there are these different villages and currently we have a huge part of our working people or working population, which we also include in a part of our population. So we can kind of also say that we are not 3,500, we are really many more than that, because we have that working population coming together. So we see that those people are coming from these different zones, and just from the same diagram that Fabian had, we marked some of the points where it's intersecting with the outer circle that we have of the green belt. And then we see how the green belt is kind of a little connection, at the same time also a little protection that's there to kind of filter what comes into the city of city of Auroville. So then we have the other purple color, which has the points where the roads that are coming through the green belt are connecting the outer ring road that's there. And then, of course, is the different roads, the current roads that come and connect us to the crown. So we really thought that now that since we are looking more at the industrial zone, we picked up these few things like the loop that Fabian showed, and also was somewhere a part of the Bellinger study, where there were loops to kind of not have the heavy traffic and all come to the crown. So we really thought that kind of a loop is very important, but not just the loop. If you see these red boxes around, we also thought that some kind of spaces needs to come around it, which could accommodate for things like parking, some kind of plaza that can start having that kind of filter happening. And it's not just the loop, not just the road, but just showing that filter, but really these kind of spaces, like for example, this radial that we already have part of it built from Kotakarai coming all over to the crown and actually connecting to the admin zone eventually. If there is a little space before that which allows parking, which allows you to transition from one mode of the transport to the another, would really help us also to transition. Like what also Fabian was mentioning, in 10 years we should look at how we can move from the motorized traffic to the more eco-friendly ways of that. And if we really create some spaces like that, we would be able to make that transition. And then while doing this, there was another inquiry that we had, and we kind of So then we also had this inquiry, and we thought like it's important to see that the previous one was more like the current scenario, but as we move forward, these junction points might be a little different. They might be exactly the junction points of the radials at the crown, the junction points of the radials on the outer ring road. And also what we thought that as we move forward, we really need to look at many more connections within the city, because as we grow, we're going to be 50,000 people. We are going to have most of us working in the industrial zone, and the connections from the villages will still be there, but it won't be directly proportional to what is today. If we are 3,000 and we have 10,000 workers or 7,000 workers, that won't be the same kind of proportion that we would have. So we really need to, as we move forward, look at many more connections within the city that are there. And we thought that for now we can have our cycle paths, our footpaths remain the same, so that we keep on still investigating on these ideas of how we connect within the city.
So then when we started looking at the crown and industrial zone a little bit more into detail, we see that there are so many of these intersections, the line of forces, there are radials, and how they intersect and how these intersections will actually create spaces and important spaces. And then if we also, like we were mentioning a little bit earlier, how the seasonal shifts changes the character of the crown also. So then, and how then the adaptive activities can start taking place in this stretch. So yeah, so when we see like there is the park intersection, there are line of forces, and then there is park on the other side, and then connecting to the other zones on the sides. So when we look at the parks, it's really like crucial points where we would like to filter out, and like something like green gateways can come in, where they also become anchor points where we know that now we are transitioning, and it also filters out the heavy motorized traffics perhaps to a more filtered and more less polluting and less impact traffic which goes in the zone. And then these again, we can also play with textures of the crown itself. So these can be the poured earth concrete streets, and then yeah, and so on the Mahasaraswati Park, it can become an educational park. It can start having many more educational activities, and there is already the Kali Fitness, which we can see how to integrate that, and then how to make it more accessible as well. And on the other side, how this intersection with industrial and cultural zones, so how like the vocational training and the handicraft activities can start merging together, and yeah, we can go. So one thing that we've been brainstorming a lot about is how do we, like if we want to keep this transitioning character of the crown, how do we, with the section that was given to us, and how do we actually try to move ahead without compromising too much on the character of this filtration, of the intersections and all of that. So what we tried to do is to keep this center of the crown, and there is an existing layer of the HT line infrastructure. So perhaps first identify the different kind of infrastructure which can be decentralized, so that doesn't need to come on the crown. And so DWATS is one of the, we believe, a very successful example. So we don't need to really have a sewage network around here, but we can actually start having zones take care of the sewage themselves. And we also had a quick chat with Gilles Boulico, and then he also suggested that yes, like it can be worked out quite nicely.
Modular systems, yeah.
Yeah, and then to have, instead of spread out, 5 minutes? No? Okay. yeah, just to finish perhaps, instead of having a spread out system of infrastructure, a little bit inspired from Eric's study that was given to us, to have a trench rack system which can be adapted and also in future flexible enough to repair or change, and yeah, so to have that kind of flexible system, and then to have a 3 meter around that for service road, motorized road. And then the crown itself can keep changing, because it keeps changing throughout. Okay, maybe we don't have the time, but anyways, it's our next step of exploration to see how this center comes in and out of this.
Show the sections, no? Next section.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's, we've identified the sections like we were mentioning before, and then so there are the existing scenarios, and then to actually start seeing how crown can transition. I think, maybe we can stop here.
Yeah, I mean, we just try to also, the next step would be to also start placing the whole idea of activities onto these sections and start seeing these transitions while we spoke about, and we'll have to work with the scale. Yeah, we do have some tiny.
But it's really interesting to see the scale of line of forces that is projected, and how, in future, how do we, That's it, I think, Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a few moments for everybody just to note down their individual feedback. So they'll have that for tomorrow, the feedback sessions.
Hi. Yeah, it's better. Hi, Radhika. Hi, Shivangi. Loved your presentation, especially what the steel is for me is the distribution of the functions in the industrial zone and how you think about it. I think that was very nice for me. And the second thing was the whole Vastu aspect. It's something which I never even thought of. So it was good to see that, and see what happens there. And I love the way you both present. It's like terrifying when I have to come after you guys. Thanks.
Are there any?
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very nice and inspiring. I really appreciate to see life during the day and a life during the night of the same space. And for me, I will steal it for sure, it reconciliates myself with a very abstract and dry aspect of the zoning. To say that industrial zone, well, okay, it's for industrial, but it's also merging with this one, connecting with the park, and it has a life through the day, and it brings different activities, not only typically the industrial one. I really appreciate that. And also the fact that you consider some infrastructure to be decentralized, which means you suddenly don't need anymore a connection over 4 kilometers of some cable, pipe, or whatever. But it's something which is more connected. It's not anymore in the length of the Crown Road, but it's connecting both sides. And I think it's also what we saw with Raj's presentation, which suddenly it brings a life towards the Crown in the transversal way and not the longitudinal. Thank you.
Any more dream-weaving architects want to share anything they want to steal? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so up next we have Ganesh and Neha. So welcome.
Here? Yeah. Put it on this side where people can, because right behind you is the video projector, so if you put it on the side, at least it's better. Okay.
Yeah, this one I think we can open later.
Yeah.
Maybe later. No, maybe when we talk about it at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
for now it's okay.
This is not in it. We just want to speak about this eventually. Yeah, we could.
Okay, when we talk, we can kind of show it. No, it's okay. चलेगा. तू करेगी मतलब. Yeah, leave that paper on. Don't finish. I think so. I took rescue remedy. Yeah, click which one?
Everybody's on the same.
Yeah, okay.
Index click,
Cool.
yeah, from your right hand.
Okay, that's good.
And it moves.
Yeah.
Okay. And click only once, and if it takes, your image are very heavy. So
Sure.
if it takes a few seconds, just
You
click
wait,
once, and you wait, and the image is gonna load up. Okay.
Sounds good. Oh. Hi, everybody. Yeah, Ganesh, Neha. So we've done this a few times, so it's almost, for me, very embarrassing to repeat the same thing. But because there are new people, so I think we have to do it. And yeah, here goes. So what we've tried to do is actually look at the galaxy, without any notion, just looking at it. That was the first exercise which we tried to do. And what you realize is there are many versions of the galaxy. Like this one, the blue one, is from the master plan document. This one is the model in the town hall. This one, I think, was the previous model which was in the town hall, the small one which is now in New York. Yeah. So what you see is from each one, there is a slight variation from one to the other. Yeah. But when we look at it, we always call it the galaxy. But it changes, yeah. And that was something very, it was a good insight for us that, it's more about how you feel about it and what comes through rather than the actual lines. So that was one important insight. And what we've tried to do in this exercise is come up with certain insights which might help the DDP team to hopefully incorporate in their own way. This we feel is very important. This is a geometry or the grid of the galaxy. So what happens is when you look at the line of force here and the line of force there, both of them have a very different geometry. And I think it's very important for us to kind of recognize that. And especially when the line of force comes on the crown, you get these kind of intersections happening, which become very... it's okay. Yeah. So if you see you have that line of force is one geometry, these line of forces are the other. The cultural zone is 60, 120, 180, that geometry. And then the crown itself is kind of radial geometry, yeah? And what's interesting for us is the intersections of the geometry when you look at the crown, yeah? That's where we are right now. Now, what is the crown? I mean, we just took this and colored. So it's actually, when you look at it, it's a string of buildings. But when you look at it carefully, more than a string of buildings, it's a building which is a string, yeah? So even though it's a town plan problem, I feel whenever I start working on it, it's actually an architectural problem in many ways, yeah? You have to go really deep in, solve it, come back. So it's So that insight was, it's not, town planning of course is important and it's there, but I see it as an architectural, almost a single building, yeah? Single building which many people build over many decades, yeah, that's the aim. So in the master plan document, you have this kind of amorphous things. So if you see, I think it's the...
This is a 1969 document.
Sorry. So it kind of breaks, and even there, this is from the model itself. Where the international zone happens, it kind of breaks. I mean, we've connected it for this particular model, but it's one string. So what comes through to us from this is the edge, which is important. So the crown is not a ring per se as a tire or something like that, yeah? It's something else. And this, I think, we need to recognize. And the edge is, we feel very crucial or super important, actually. So the next thing after looking, what we did was we actually drew it, yeah? Drawing in the sense, we just actually drew it. So what you see here is not the actual galaxy which you saw in the previous slides, but it's something which we kind of took inspiration from that and we did, yeah? So in a way, this is another galaxy, but it's the same galaxy, but it's another version of it, yeah? And what we realized is when you do this, no, it's like when you sketch somebody's face, you see so much, yeah? So it's the same. When you're here, for instance, and you're coloring this green spot, you think, what is in the green spot? Why am I coloring it? What tree is this? All those things kind of come through. Yeah, now I'm losing it. Cool. You want to say something here? Yeah. Okay. So the inferences which we kind of drew from this looking and drawing act was, it's a continuous built form, built by different architects over a period of time. And how do you make a single building which different people built and still looks cohesive? So one idea was, if you have to reference your neighbor, that is a given. But what would be more interesting is if you take a palette from one building, and when you're designing something next to it, see, for example, this building has 3 materials as a palette. You need to take at least one of this when you do the neighboring building. So once you do that, you get a very cool kind of variation which will automatically happen without really enforcing or giving a rule to somebody. And yeah, come on. Connections at the roof, I mean, that's pretty obvious when you look at it. It looks like it's all connected. Boundary definition, dynamic crown edge. So this is what we got when we looked at it. And one thing was, you find that it's dense in some parts and it kind of peters down in some. So that's an interesting aspect to kind of hold as well. Want to add something? Yeah? It's okay. So now what we're trying to do is take that learning and try to kind of merge or integrate with this. This is what we're trying to do. This is the aim of the project.
So there were 2 aspects to it. So we were talking about the concept so far, and we're trying to then see the context and somehow try to integrate both and see where it takes us.
Yeah. And our whole presentation, I forgot to tell you, initially we have this whole thing about how we see the galaxy. Then we talk about Darkali. Then we'll talk about the road itself, how we see it. So that's how we've kind of spread it out. So this is an interesting thing. So the crown is about 4.3 kilometers walk, yeah? And for me, it's very important that when you walk 4.3, you don't get bored, yeah? So it has to be, there has to be variation. So what I'm saying when I say bored is, there is a certain sense of experience when you walk in, say, Pondi, yeah? You walk on the street and you have buildings here, different heights maybe, but that's the experience, yeah? What the crown, at least from looking at it, tells us is, because your space where you walk, yeah, because the road is not very apparent when you look at the galaxy drawing, but we have to assume it's there, or the street, whatever you call it. So when you go through there, you have things above your head, and you go through, and then suddenly you have an open space where you get light, and you go, so a lot of things happening in section. So that is coming from the section, but also from the place where it travels through. Like here, the lines of force are very dense here in the residential zone and in the industrial zone. And then what happens when you go from the international zone to, say, through Darkali to the industrial zone. And all this which we have, the locations through which we pass in the crown, we have to see them as an asset. Yeah? And that is an asset of experience. That's how we see it right now. Is there something? So this is a very important drawing for us. So if you take the crown, and when you do the negative of the model, this is what you get. And this is what is one of the key things which we're trying to integrate in our next slides, is what happens here between the buildings, what's shown as green and blue right now, what are those spaces? Because those are the spaces which actually for us define the crown. The buildings, of course, is an extra layer, but these kind of hold the whole thing together. And this is something which we can do now. We don't need to wait for the money and everything for the buildings to come. You can almost experience the crown today if we do something like this. And actually imagine the buildings also, which might come, 20 years down the line.
So at the moment, we are flipping between context and concept. So from the context of the location, of the zoning, of what's happening on the plan itself, we went back to the concept. Yeah. Now we want to take it forward again and see how. Now we go back to the context of it and trying to look at the water streams. We just looked at them and seeing how that concept of the green and blue galaxy can really come on the ground today. Yeah. Ideally, all the water bodies, all the water catchments would actually be on the inner side, like so somehow catch it here in a larger catchment pond or here, and then perhaps have overflows on the other side, or have different means of collecting water and get that green and blue infrastructure in. Yeah. So the point of intersection of the natural runoff streams with the crown becomes surface water catchments for reuse after filtration. So it was the emergency of water was made very obvious in the last several weeks. So really catch it and reuse it in not just gardening but also flushing and any other domestic purposes. And these would not be the only solution. These would also be a part of a larger multi-pronged water strategy where harvesting of roof runoff, sewage water reuse like Raj mentioned, then desalinated water network can be a part of a secondary or tertiary or primary, I don't know, and percolation of course. So everything needs to actually work from what we've seen people speak the last several weeks. Okay. So looking at the water streams that come, the one thing that really said, oh my God, they're all going. Where are they all going? They were all sort of going to this one line of force, which happens to be at the meeting point of these water streams. So we would like to call it the line of force of life. So it's an industrial zone inverse line of force that is expressed by carving into the earth rather than really building over it. And this is a tricky image, so water also represents emotion. So I invite you to really look at what that brings out and just notice it. Yeah.
Okay, let it go, then I'll try to explain.
It's going to loop on.
Oh, okay, it's on a loop. So what we are trying to do now is, with this whole water being caught along the crown, and the green areas are actually identifying important trees all along the crown, and then asking an expert on trees to say, if I'm to build near this tree, what is the distance I should respect? So that is the input which I think we should get from them, and then create the green and the blue kind of void spaces first. And then to represent the galaxy in white, these are all probably different buildings which will be built over different times, yeah? And each one is probably built by a different architect. But if we have some plan in mind already respecting the blue and the green. This, once it's all done, will all come together to get closer to the galaxy image which we talk about. And what's interesting when you look at something like this is, it's almost you wouldn't know who built what, and which I think is actually pretty cool, yeah. And the roofs connect, the material thing can happen. So it's one strategy you can say which we are trying to kind of look into. And what, if you look at the section, oh yeah, I mean,
so there is another thing where when we made the model, we made all these loops, and it's hard to actually put them back in the same way, which is okay, because it'll all change and it'll still kind of be what it is.
So in terms of the points are the green, the blue, the edge, which is important, and the heights, which vary from around 10 meters to 2.5 floors. And then a pedestrian access which goes through, below the buildings actually, and this is the key. The pedestrians are walking below the buildings to go from one place to the other. This point we'll come back to again later, but I think that's a crucial thing in the way we are trying to think of this right now.
So this we can skip.
Yeah,
Can you
skip
skip
it,
it for us? Okay.
That
just
no.
Yeah.
No, this is good.
So now we want to look at the master plan perspective 2025. And one of the things that we want to really try and do is identifying the need for conservation of historic, ecologically sensitive, and aesthetically important areas. And that takes us to
Yeah.
to take it forward.
Sure. So when you look at the Darkali, this slide basically shows what are the kind of, when you overlay the maps, all the maps together, what happens in the Darkali sanctuary. I think that's the right word for it, sanctuary. So part of Darkali actually is in the international zone. So obviously you'll have the crown of the international zone going till here, till the park, yeah. And then you have the American pavilions happening here. And then on the top you have, of course, the industrial zone, which kind of comes, and I'll use this now. And this is the vocational training band. And then the crown comes and kind of stops at the park here. So one of the things which we will also talk about when we talk about the section is we feel the crown would do many things depending on where it is, yeah. So when it goes through the park, I think the crown would basically almost float over the park, let's say, yeah. It'll still be the crown, but it's a crown which floats over the park, yeah.
So we want to really look at how the crown holds the forest, which it has a tremendous potential to do. So spatial density versus green density versus social density. Which of these are we looking at within that context? So the pedestrian.
This one? You can go through this.
Okay.
No?
So pedestrian access in the sensitive areas along the crown with minimal, low impact. Like Glen Murcutt comes here again with structures that touch the earth lightly. Canopy walks and bridges and culverts over the water catchment network can be integrated in the pedestrian access. Now, special building guidelines need to be somehow prepared for the pavilions that are planned in the international zone. So the pavilions of the Americas need to have certain guidelines which are sensitive to the context where they find themselves. Also, the industrial zone line of force that comes, which I had made into a line of force of water, needs to have guidelines which are line of force of life. Need to have their own guidelines, and also limiting the proposed building functions to ones like tree care, arboriculture, canopy experience, research, study, seed banks, and other green infrastructure. So the users can also kind of work in tandem with where they find themselves in within the larger context of Auroville.
मैं बताऊं एक मिनट.
Okay, sorry.
एक point बता देना चलिए. So we feel this is an important model where we can actually demonstrate or use this idea of the crown thinning in different places, yeah? And it can perhaps come through here, where the dense crown here, yeah, but I think it's, kind of peters out here, and then anyway in the park something else happens, and then slowly it comes back again in the industrial zone. So I think using that insight from the galaxy, from looking at the galaxy, one way of adapting it perhaps could be this. And another idea which we were thinking is to let the crown actually from here rise up and go at a height among the trees at 4 meters, 5 meters, whatever. Let it be a bridge which goes through the forest, yeah? So you have to imagine, if you're living anywhere down here in the residential zone, yeah, and you want to go to work at the industrial zone, you'll actually be walking along here and then going on this bridge through trees to go to work, yeah? And we have to see this for that aspect. It is an asset which we all will use, yeah? And so this is just one idea. I mean, you have like the New York High Line, no? That's, I think, about 2 kilometers or something. This is 1/4, 1/5 of it. But I think what we have is much more than what those guys at New York have. You know, they'll have to look at buildings. We'll go through higher trees, yeah? And we have to come up with a strategy of how the crown kind of becomes less dense and, you know, again becomes very dense over there, is to have perhaps pavilions like this connected with walkways or skyways or treeways, whatever, like just bridges. But basically, when you look down, you have the whole sanctuary, but these could be whatever functions which come up over time, yeah? And the line of force we've attempted, I mean, another idea for the line of force is actually like if you get a school, yeah, and the kids actually walk through from the bottom and go up some kind of a bridge, yeah, all the way to the top through trees happening everywhere at different levels. So it's like you're actually experiencing a tree from the bottom to canopy and above canopy. So it becomes an experience by itself. And I think what the line of force are where they are also for a reason, perhaps. I mean, you can read it like that. But the important thing for us to do, that's the challenge, is how do you find the right attitude and solution for that in that place? And that is the direction we are coming from, yeah? So this is just one idea. I mean, there could be others. But this can be very cool, and it can be like very thin steel structures. I mean, it's not to say there won't be any impact. Of course there will be, yeah? But we need to be prepared, and we need to make the step, some step, and of at least looking at it. And that is what this is. We are still looking at it, what is possible, and dreaming, so that perhaps from this something else can come. Okay, this we can skip. I mean, there's just a section which we did through, just to understand already the different experiences from the international, all the way coming to the park here, Mahakali Park, yeah? And you see the lines of force going up. This is the water line of force. You take.
So the qualitative, we just tried to dabble a little bit, go into that a little bit. We're trying to understand how integrating the concept with the context offers a very unique opportunity to explore weaving different experiences of moving through the urban environment of the crown. So creating a sense of discovery. Urban environments are places to find inspiration and energy. Designing for cognitive ease, to really feel comfortable knowing where you're going and understanding your environment in a very clear way. Then Shinrin Yoku is the Japanese practice of taking in the forest through a senses, so forest bathing. Through the urban sanctuary. Now, people are all over the world are trying to create this within the dense urban jungle, but we have the opportunity to do the opposite. So somehow really grab that moment and, you know, try to get, because there's evidence that suggests that natural environments can restore, rejuvenate and boost your attention. So in fact, like Ganesh mentioned, that when you're walking to the industrial zone, for example, you almost go through a process of clearing your head before you get to the task that you're planning to do in the process. And an invitation for mindful movement through planned walkways and cycle paths, a built environment that is planned as a nudge to pause a little bit and bringing in a sense of delight.
So now in this section we'll talk about our attempt at reading the road, you can say, like what?
We had a bit of a technical thing where we lost our presentation, so this is
part 2.
Sorry?
Yeah, take time. So what we did was basically we took the section which we got from TDC and tried to understand it and see what that gives us. Yeah, this is, so I mean we can forget, I mean this is what the section, the plan which goes with that section. So you see here, the crown actually, this is all pedestrian. This is covered pedestrian zone, yeah? So the idea is the people are walking through here, yeah? And now the crown, and this is important, is meant to be pedestrian and EV shuttles at 15 kilometers per hour, yeah? And that's how we should look at it. So I feel we should solve the problem for that first, and then think about what do we do with the motorcycles right now. I think that's something for later, yeah? So, because once you think of both, you crash, basically, yeah? So here, you have a line of infrastructure here and a line of infrastructure here. Then you have the vehicles here, and then you have the cycle here. So now our kind of take on this is, I said we don't touch the infrastructure, because if that's what's needed, that's what's needed, yeah? And this, what's going here is basically EV shuttles at 15 kilometers per hour, yeah? Maybe there are 5, maybe there are 10, yeah? Our crown is 4.3 kilometers, yeah? So I think the cyclist can very well maneuver here. We don't need a separate cycling zone. It is one zone, yeah? And in fact, I can walk there also, even though I'm walking in the pedestrian covered zone. So that is the key. So what happens is, when you think like that, you can actually do this, and you'd come to about 7 meters or even more, yeah? And what we need to think about is, okay, at some point, it needs to allow for an ambulance or a fire engine, yeah? And I think it allows. And what we should do is, we should avoid this thinking of a curb, you know? You usually have like a curb here, and then road is slightly depressed. Don't do that. Make everything flat. So people can walk anywhere, and it's just some very, very, very slow-moving vehicle which is going through there. So what you get is a stretch of paved area which is going through. Now from this, we'll come to the next slide. Okay. Here we try to just see the different sections which happen through the crown. These are just random, just to get an idea, actually.
It's an MP4. This one?
Yeah. It's like, it kind of moves.
What is this to push?
It's got a play
it's
button
an MP4.
somewhere.
Click again? Wait. Okay, sorry. Don't click too much.
I think you'll show that.
Yeah, you can talk about that meanwhile.
Yeah. इसके बाद एक ही slide था ना क्या था? Forgot. Cool. Just this we had done for our first presentation, and we keep improving. And for example, these could happen anywhere along the crown. You'll have the lines of force crossing, but then suddenly where it crosses the park, maybe it just elevated and it goes through over the parks. Yeah. Now to the next slide.
This is the last slide.
The last slide. Okay. Yeah. This is something which is still in progress, but this is very important also, and this comes from what Omar had touched upon in terms of
shading.
Yeah. You said something very nice in the morning, whatever, just repeat it.
Okay, it's hard to read this, but Ganesh insisted. So it seems, for example, on the 15th of March, and I think that was May, one of this is May. These are the two areas on the crown which will really require shading and will not have self-shading with the buildings that will come up. So otherwise, most of it, once it's completely built, would have a lot of self-shading involved.
So where this is coming from is, we need to do these studies throughout to actually come up, when you see the crown and you have roofs going over or buildings going over, where should they happen? They should happen where you need them. So it's like finding a reason from it for what needs to happen. So that's kind of the angle we are taking. This was the last slide. And this morning, we did,
maybe you hold it up,
yeah, there's two sketches. I mean, this is the plan through the crown, yeah? So, I'll put it like this. Okay, so let's say this is, Matramandar is on this side, yeah? And this is what we just talked about, the paved crown, or reduced crown street, let's call it, yeah? Oh, thanks. So what it does is basically, this whole thing is a pedestrian walkway. Here you have the EV vehicle which is going, and then here you have the services here and here. These are the places where there are existing trees which we locate, and then we mark the space they need and create these kind of courtyards, public spaces. For instance, some can be really large. There is one slide from Henrik from last time, which is very nice, where he talked about different sizes of public spaces. And I think that can come in here very easily. And you have some small, really tiny, medium, large, whatever. And then the water which comes in from there can be held. This can perhaps be roof water which is collected. And importantly, reused. I think that is the key word which we need to nowadays start using. And the black ones, the black represent maybe the columns. And yeah, this is one section of the crown. And when you look through, this we are not so happy, I would say, right now. But this is just to see. I mean, this is a good exercise. We thought, I mean, it's good to make mistakes in the beginning. In paper, at least, it's better to do mistakes.
Finish the mistakes on paper.
Yeah. So, but it gives you an idea where you have a very little built space, but then the section here would be different. When you walk 10 steps, you'll get a different section. Something else will happen. Another 10 steps, something else will happen. So then it becomes really dynamic. Oh, sorry. Yeah? Okay, cool. I think I'm almost done, but yeah, you can read things into such sections, you know. But yeah, that's the idea. That's where we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So just taking a few quiet moments to jot down any feedback notes on your forms to help you remember for tomorrow. Yes, eventually we will take the forms. If you can make your writing legible, that would be great. But if that's not possible, that's also fine. But they're for you. The main purpose over the next 2 days is to guide you, and then at the end of tomorrow, we'll just take them to try and summarize some notes for Vastashilpa. Okay, so are there any of the Dreamweaving architects who have some feedback, anything they would like to steal from the presentation? Dorothy.
Yeah, hi, thanks. That was really nice and inspiring. I like the way you using primarily, or not primarily, but using the green and the blue to sort of to define the built form. So letting that guide you into finding this. It's so difficult to find a start. So this is a really nice sort of interpretation of that. And the study into the different experiences of walking through the crown to actually give that thought and sort of, envision it very tangibly. It's really nice.
Is there anyone else? Anything anyone would like to steal, they would like to share? Okay. So we have our last. Oh.
Thank you, Ganesh and Neha. I love the daring scale that you work at when we saw that section. And I mean, it's really something which is very inspiring, and we can look at working at those scales. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay, hiding at the back, sorry.
Thank you, Ganesh and Neha, for that very inspiring presentation. I like particularly the Darkali analysis that you had, and I certainly would be inspired to even edit some of my thinking on that currently. So I need to quickly edit my slides. So yeah, thank you for your input.
Okay, is there anyone else I can't see? Okay, good. So I think everyone's being really good, paying attention, and it's a lot of presentations this morning. So this is our 6th one in the Marie. If anybody just quickly needs just a stretch before she starts, just take that opportunity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Marie. I'm a landscape architect, so don't be surprised by what you will find when you will see. I feel a bit in minority with all these architects, but it's really the idea of DREAMWEAVING, weaving the project together. I know, it's me. Click.
You pick the other one. Yeah, like that. Of course. Is that the right one?
I changed this morning, so I guess yes. That was the first thought. So, no.
You have a lot of things.
Okay. So go back to the first. No, that's after. That's after. Yeah, you're doing like the other time. No, you show all the presentations. There is no suspense. No, there is. I mean, great. Okay, we start by the beginning, which is a section given by TDC. I decide to take only the crown road. What you saw from the other presentation is that you have the road and you have the building space, which are hosting the pedestrian circulation. But because we are talking about a very soft, I think it's Ganesh who said that, we are going to a very soft circulation, and we are thinking of electrical slow, not, safe circulation. I consider the crown road as a place where we want the life to happen, to merge, a meeting to happen. So if you take the section of TDC, you see a road of 4.5, which will become 2 plus 2, so 6.7. I'm in meter because I'm French. And I insist in meter, I'm sorry. So it's good to have this measurement in mind, because the width of a car, it's 2 meters. The width of a public transport, a bus, it's 2.5. So keep in mind the scale, because that's really what I will question, the scale of the road. And then you have, of course, they said it, infrastructure, a cycle path linked with the green. And this is working to me because you have the two facades of the building at 16.7 T. This is abstract, this is theory. It works because you have this feeling of framing by the building. And it's me who is doing it. But because the road today is a road with fast vehicle, polluting vehicle, noisy vehicles, no one wants to be closer to this road. So the buildings, the public buildings, have the tendency to go much more further away from the road, which results, for example, for the library, it's 22 meters away from the crown. Kalpana, there is 4 more meters away, and that means the space in between is not whole anymore because of the quality of the road today. So you see there is, so in this space, which is left free, which is not organized because it was not supposed to be like that, you see a lot of parking, wild parking, vehicles. You see a lot of things which are not addressed. I prefer when it's you who do the text. So from that, I will question the width of the road and the quality of the road. Coming back to Matrimondier, the center, which is like, for me, a golden radiating center, which we can feel even at the crown level. Then I draw several lanes, which can be the different lanes of circulation, cycle, bus, car, bike, anything that you can, infrastructure that you can think of. And I will question this width, but it could be also much more abstract, like the different use that the crown needs to address. Social meeting, ecological function, collecting the water. So all these use, you know, it's the Crown Road can solve it, should address this. It's not only a road, it's a place where you have all these phenomena that need to be solved. So you see this Matrimondier, the 4 portal from the 4 gates of Matrimondier, Mahalakshmi, Mahakali, Mahasarasvati, and Maheshwari, which are also, by the way, the 4 parks. They have all an impact on the crown. The 12 garden, which is more like that, which give also a direction, give a sense of where we are, not to be bored, like Ganesh was saying, in this crown. Something happens each time. And the 4 parks, which are the one I mentioned last minute. And that's exactly the design. I mean, the green line are the lines from the master plan. And each time it's intersect with the galaxy, with the crown. No? Okay. So you have the green line and you have the blue line. The blue line is ecological sensitive zone. You see in Gaia all the percolation areas that we need to save. In Dark Alley, it's also related matter, no? But water. But it's different type of water. Dark Alley, it's catching the water before it goes to canyon and before it goes to the village. And Oro Dam on that side, which is a canyon also. And you can see there is a kind of relation with the park. And that gives a kind of perimeter on the crown to say, oh, something is happening here. There is another priority than the circulation. No. And that means every time it crosses these different things, I decide to reduce the size of the crown. I decide that in the park, when a crown road is crossing the park, it's a park who has a priority. Which means, yes, we can still have this experience of wandering around Matrimondier, around the city center, around the city, but it's something else which is happening, and I'm not the first one. I mean, I have to slow down, and I have to acknowledge what is happening already there. So you can see that there is, in these 2 parks, I decide there will be only 1 lane. Let's call it lane. We don't know what it means. But there's only 1 lane, so it's very narrowing the crown. While this, for example, here and here, something else a bit different will happen, mainly here, because sometimes if I reduce too much, that means I will have to have this traffic somewhere else. So I will not save more place for nature because I will have constantly different intersections. So I will combine everything on a shared space in this area. You will understand after if you don't understand. So that means now it starts to look like that. It's not anymore a ring with the same width, the same section. The section you saw on the first slide is a typical section for everything. And I really believe that we need to adjust this section to what is going around this 4 kilometers. Whatever is water, whatever is contour, whatever is building, but we need to change the section, so to draw different sections. So you see already there is different of things happening. It's not totally abstract and just a dream. I took this road from Henrik and also from Fabian study about mobility. That's why it was very useful to have this zoom out on mobility to understand that we are not just dreaming on something and we don't consider the rest. No? We have an idea, which is for this part, which are not pedestrian, we let the traffic going through. Okay, you are maybe not well oriented. So this is visitor center, and this is along Kupam and Kotakarai, and this is the College Road, going through. So I imagine that, okay, maybe today, we are talking about DDP, we are talking about 5 years. Today and for 5 years, we will have to deal with that. We cannot just stop the traffic. So we need to live with that, but doesn't obstruct us to dream about something else, which we have the power to work on. And it's the other section. Here, I don't consider this to have, this is a solar kitchen. I don't consider this stretch being traffic going through, but the traffic can come from here and filter, maybe be just access. Let's see how we can solve that. So go back to the 4 parks. So in green, you have well, it's a bit complex, but in green, this green, you have the park like the master plan. Then in this green, you have what you call the forest of Auroville as it has been planted and developed it. Let's remember that the trees which are here are not just coming by chance. It's because it's a new forest here. So it's because people have planted in this area. So I think it's very good also for our future planning that if we want to have a park here, here, or here, we need to plant it. It will not happen just like that. It will happen if we wait for decades, but if we want to have the park because we want to have a city, we need to plant it now. And then I extend, when you see the section, the intersection between the crown and the park, it is very small. It's about, this one is about 60 meters, which is very, very small, to 200 meter maximum, the stretch of the park. So if you go through with a fast vehicle, you don't even see it. You don't even have your green corridor aspect that you want or your filtration. So I took the liberty to increase a little bit with the ecological sensitive zone. So Gaia for the percolation, Dark Alley and the canyon for water catchment, and Oro Dam on this area. And then I'm a bit more comfortable with that section, that stretch, which are giving you a sense of green. Did I want to say something else? Yeah, I wanted just to say, if you look at the black and the green, the proportion, it's half-half, which can be a good way to say the city will be half green. The crown will be half green, that's why. Let's dream. For each park, I would imagine to have a different type of thematic. Again, not to be bored. I mean, it's not about to have one park which look exactly the same as the other. So for Mahalakshmi, it's more to be together, to have a shared space where you have your plateau, where all the vehicles, all the circulation, type of circulation can happen, and then the rest will leave it free for percolation, to plant trees in order to help the percolation. Youth Center, Bliss Forest, come back to the playfulness and the joyfulness that was a symbol of this area, and build the crown or the space of the crown together. Mahasarasvati Park, which is Dark Alley and a very large extension on both sides. To decide that water and wildlife is a priority. So we are just going on the tiptoe on it, and we divide. I will show you different things. And the last one here, it's education. We have the international zone here, and we have the visitor center, and we have a lot of guest house here. So we can imagine that this is a perfect place to spray the knowledge of water, of not polluting water, collecting water, reuse of water. So let's go to all of the park, Mahalakshmi Park. So you can see on this little drawing here that the official lines are here, but I double it. But that means it's about 250 meter stretch. I double it in order to really have a space which gives this feeling of park. Every vehicles are on the same plateau. We don't have a curb to limit the road. You know, we really have a connection with nature on the both sides. Because it's quite large, we plant trees which are tall trees close to the road. And eventually, yes, because we have to wait for the tree to grow, we can create shade structure in this area. I start by thinking that there will be no building in this park stretch, just to let you know. There will be so many buildings on the other section, so when I cross the park, I have minimum buildings. I can have shade structure, I can have pavilion, I can have something which, for example, the shuttle, AV shuttle station, but not a regular facade. The facade is coming from the tree itself. So that's a section on the same park. So I put 6 meters of the road for the electrical AV shuttle that will cross all the area, and that will be much more regular than today. Today is not existing, so we have a very frequent public transport on this area, but we share with bicycle, motorbike. Sometimes, you know, along the road there is place where something is happening, like what maybe you have experienced in other city, a bit dense in the street, where someone suddenly sings, someone will jungle, someone will do capoeira, whatever. It's just something is happening also in this space. And I keep the 2 meter and 1 meter, so at the end it's 9 meter. That's for the, I call it infrastructure, but it's not your infrastructure. It's for anything which is built or a little shade or something like that. It doesn't have to be a little shed. It can be very urban and modern shed. It doesn't have to be rustic, no? So I have a total of 9 meter road compared to the 16.70 width that we are talking, that the brief is giving us. But again, it depends how you see the things. If you consider that the road should address percolation problem, green plantation, we can imagine that this is also the crown space. It's a bit tricky, but no, it depends. I go to the top one, Mahakali Park. On this little sketch, you see that's the stretch between here and here. It's 300 meters. I guess you know a lot that space, that there is a road here which connects to College Road, which means it's traffic that we cannot influence right now. We need to put a lot of work and effort toward Panchayat and place to discuss with the villager and with the bioregion in order to prevent that very massive traffic that we can have from here. So here we have only one stretch for only the AV shuttle, and we have a series of different experiences along this road, which is for anything, pedestrian, cycle, it's similar. So if you arrive here, if you arrive with your AV shuttle, you can go on and you are directly there. If you are with your cycle, you can meander all along this place. And it's very important that we don't have polluting, noisy, fast circulation, traffic in this area, because there is a connection with the school, which are here. It's the connection between the center to the school. And it's a connection, it's really a radiating, connection between the diagonal. We can imagine that it goes with the stream, that you see here. Whoop. You don't see it anymore. I'm lost. Yeah, thank you. So it's the contour is only 1 meter from here to here. You know, it's a slope like that, and that's why we start to have the beginning of the stream here. We can imagine that the circulation of pedestrian and cycle are going close to this place. It's, again, more you raise awareness, more you protect it. And you have also water bodies along the crown itself to create other space here. Yeah. The section, so it's really because I reduced to 4 meters the main road, which is not a road. In that case, it's an alley, let's say. And I have several 1s, 2 and 2, or 1 and 150 along, you know, the space is always different here. I don't need to have a lot of shade. I mean, I don't need to plant large trees here because I have this space here which will provide the shade that I need during the day. Because I reduce the horizontal open space and I section with other green area, I don't need to, to create more shade. Dark Alley or Mahasarasvati Park. So you come from here and you arrive in that area and you finish here. So again, this is a very sensitive place for water, for wildlife, for a lot of things. So it's for afforestation. So the idea is the heavy traffic will go. That's also a bypass that Enrique and Fabien propose near the Kali temple and going there. And that means you have more chance to address the pressure from the village. And in this area, you have simply a catwalk going from this point to this point. So yes, my experience around the crown is always this circle. I know that I have matrimony on that side. I know I'm in this, this circular pedestrian path, but I don't need to go with my big width of road. So all the infrastructure goes here, and then a bit further we have the road on that side. And we can repeat, this curve. We can repeat with the different areas that we need to build in order to catch the water. And it can become totally a place just to enjoy, to see, to go. It's a goal, no? Section again. So you can recognize that the existing pond, that's a perfect circle from the 690 from the banyan tree. I mean, it's pedestrian. It can be cycle if you want, but I think it's more easy to go there. And again, I have 4 meters because I really want to have my shuttle going there. And I can repeat this, this circular water body. Then the last one was a bit more difficult, 60 meter only stretch. And I realized that Aurodam is quite far from the crown. So I'm not sure I want to invite whoever will come to the crown to the Aurodam canyon. Yet I think this place has, it's much further, the canyon and the dam of Aurodam. And we have a lot of housing and buildings already here on this. So I would imagine the crown more to be something which is enclosed and stay. It's more a filtration for the noise or for the, you see here there is a car of a student, of kids who go that way. So maybe it's good to filter on both sides. And we can use a lot of plantation. And here you see a double alley of trees in the center. So the center becomes 4 meters of shade path promenade. I think you saw it in some reference picture of Sonali this morning. So you have the shade from the tree in the center, and that's the living place. That's where you meet people. And then you have the circulation on both sides, which can be reduced. And then you have your buildings on that side. So here you have 14 meters with, quite a lot of space. Each time I put the infrastructure under the road, because I imagine that we have always a second road if we need access and if we need to repair, we will have always this part to use if we really have to have access to it. Coming back to the existing stretch between PTDC to Arca. So that's what we have today. And what I would imagine is really to reclaim the paved area. So we have about 7 meters the road is not 7 meters, but there is an extra place where we can't plant trees, so I cannot provide shade. So the idea was to create another layer closer to the street, because it's not a road anymore if we go for pedestrian and public transport. And this will be more at the scale of pedestrian cycle. So you imagine you have your bakery delivery here, you have ice cream on that side, and you wait for your shuttle. This is what I try to draw here. So you recognize the solar kitchen here and Portus on this area. Library, Kailash, Kalpana. Okay, and you have the existing road from Certitude. Again, I'm talking about the next 5 years. So what will be fantastic is that in 10 years, it will not be even there, the existing road from Certitude. But within 5 years, the priority is really to shift from a normal road to a pedestrian public transport road. That will help us to reclaim the paved area and to live here, and to have, so it's not just by decision, it's quite a lot of work that we have to put into that. We can imagine, to create a lot of shade structure on the street, but also to create a space for the bus, for the walkers to go to the village and to have a special rate and to have a special node of transport. I imagine to close this part to car, even the Aurovilian car, but again, we can imagine a bypass on the back. We can imagine a fast tag system for those who have that. But that means also we have this place here where we have our car, the Aurovilian car. You can park here. So if you want to go to Pandit, Chennai, Bangalore, whatever, if you need your car, you still have the car here. This is more for the day parking in this area, and here, of course, you have all your charging, power station for your e-bike. And that creates already a sense of urban fabric. Do I have to say something? No, I don't know. You see the markets here. You see a very large public space that is created after the event of this last month to work together and to create something together. You see, of course, a lot of water. It's not water. It's just, again, the idea of collecting, reusing, recycle. And so more it's decentralized. It's a bit like what we saw with solar panel, to work with a cluster instead of trying to do everything on the ground, but to have a cluster of buildings which work together for electrical, for water, for recycling, even for waste, because we can imagine that the road, if we don't change into a different type of road, will create a lot of waste, a lot of pollution. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. So we've got a few minutes of silence just for everybody to take down their notes, their feedback on their forms. Okay. So, okay, I can see that some of the dream-weaving architects do have some feedback or some steals they want to share.
Thank you, Marie. It's always such a visual treat to see your presentations. For me, the steals are those details, further details that you put in through the park. Yeah, because I also feel that those are kind of pause points when one is going all along the crown. So that's my steal point, and I love your sketches. Thank you.
Yeah, for me also, to see, it's the third time that I see your work now, and to see the development of it and the sensitivity that you bring into that part of the crown. I think it makes a lot of sense. When I look at the sketch in Darkali, I think it's perfectly feasible. One has to see with infrastructure and also, yeah, thank you. Really nice.
Yeah. Every time when I see your presentation, I realize that it's so good to have you in this team. You really are an asset. And the way you have treated the marriage of parks and the crown, I think it really sets the bar how to treat the crown in the park. And again, like your hand-drawn sketches give so much life. Like most of us architects resort to plans, elevation, sections, and all that. And your hand-drawn sketches bring that quality. So really, I mean, I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, Mari. We didn't have enough time during our presentation, but from your last time, the steel, you mentioned about having sections every 20 meters. So we did that right now. Of course, it didn't come through because it's still work in progress. But yeah, I would really like to thank, because a lot of theory that we were trying to understand through the plan information, we could actually start imbibing it when we started doing this process of the section. So thanks a lot for that. And from today's presentation, I really appreciated the approach of looking at 5-year transition, moving towards an ideal mobility. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Excellent to see the development of your ideas. And what I really also appreciate is that you have a very clear vision how to change towards a pedestrian city and with public transport on the crown, and how you face to support, to change our old habits into that. And I think it's doable and it's beautiful, and thank you so much.
Any more dream-weaving architects? Anything to steal? Okay, just checking I'm not missing anybody right at the back or anything. Okay, great. So now I'm going to hand over to Mona. And hopefully if the technology is working, we can get some feedback from Doshi and Vastashiಲ್ಪ Foundation.
Okay, so we've been in touch with Rajiv, and it seems a whole team of people are there. I can see Utpal and Jaideep, and of course Doshiji. They have been partially, hopefully, been part of this. Okay, so Rajiv, would you like to just give some comments? It would be lovely before we break for lunch. Can you hear?
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear?
Yes. Yeah, you're frozen, Rajiv.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, fantastic. I mean, I loved all the presentations. I love the fact that, I mean, there's so many people with such enthusiasm and such energy who've been participating and coming up with wonderful ideas. So, thank you to all of you. Gives us a lot of thought. uh, I noticed that you've been using the word steal. Don't agree with that word. I say we borrow, we share. So thank you for sharing. Not that they're stealing your ideas. I think it's thank you for sharing all your wonderful ideas. And we will see how we sort of take these further so that they can be realized eventually. I think what we've been talking about is three parts which I could sort of make out. And I'm going to be sort of generalizing right now rather than getting into any specifics. The first is that we are between the celestial and the circumstantial. So we're trying to figure out how do we match these two. There's a celestial order, which is sort of the time frames for that are much, much longer. The circumstantial is more immediate. And how do we sort of combine these together so that we can synthesize or synchronize these two sort of aspects of this plan? The second one is, I think, very importantly, that all of you have raised is about natural systems and man-made systems. And I think the natural systems obviously take precedence because they need to, they're sort of based on what the land is, what the topography is, what flows of water are, the way that they do. Uh, the man-made systems can generally adapt. Human beings are very adaptable, and I think we can generally adapt to situations. The third thing that I'd like to bring about, to sort of highlight is the centralized and decentralized situations that you've all talked about, and at what scales do centralized systems work, and at what scales decentralized systems work, and in what aspect. So I think these are the three main sort of binaries which I thought have been highlighted by all the presentations. So I'm very, very sort of enthused by the way that you've identified these and you've come up with, the starting of ideas. I think these ideas need to be developed further. I think there's some of them are great ideas, but as you sort of move towards making them into reality, the number of layers and conflicts that arises and how do you sort of settle from that and make choices would be important aspects. So I really do look forward to this taking place in the next session. And I hope to be there personally for the next session so that we can, discuss at length, face to face, rather than through this medium, which I can see there's a time lag and I don't know if even getting clearly what I'm trying to say out here. So thank you very much.
No, it was quite clear, Rajiv. We could understand most of it, almost all of it. And so we'll break for lunch now, and we have 5 more presentations after lunch at 2, Rajiv. So whoever is there, I mean, if Utpal and Jaideep are joining us, and whenever Doshiji can, it would be great. And we look forward to have your comments again in the evening, if possible. Yeah. Thank you so much for being online. Yeah. Okay. So there may be